The Roman root of Greece. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201, Negotiate. The room was filled with smoke, the ashtray on the table was full of cigarette butts, and the three of them were silent for a long time. Constantine coughed and broke the silence. The question now is, can the alliance formed by Bulgaria and Serbia, combining the strengths of the two countries, be able to compete with the Ottoman Empire? As the chief of the general staff of the Greek army, Emmanuel has access to a large number of military intelligence of Balkan countries on weekdays. For the same Balkan countries, whether it is Bulgaria and Serbia, or the Ottoman Empire, the Military Intelligence Bureau under the General Staff uses or overt or covert means to collect a large amount of detailed intelligence over the years, which is an important basis for the staff to formulate plans recalling the military intelligence data on Bulgaria and Serbia in his mind. Emma Inner said, according to the analysis and speculation of our General Staff, under the war situation, the number of troops that Serbia can recruit is about 250,000, and Bulgaria is about 350,000. The two countries join forces, the scale of military force can reach 600,000 people, facing the Ottoman Empire's limit force of 700,000 troops. There is really a war. Hearing this, Constantine and Venizelos looked at each other and understood each other. According to the analysis of the data given by the Chief of General Staff, the two countries jointly attacked the Ottomans, and their strengths were similar to each other. For the two countries, the risk was too great. Constantine pondered. A victory is a tragic victory, but on paper, the military strength of the two countries is still weak. If they lose, the independent status they deliberately obtained before will be threatened. Venizelos. Originally anxious brows also stretched out. The two countries have a cold attitude towards Greece's alliance invitation. It is not that they are really unwilling to form an alliance with Greece, but they want to obtain a relatively favorable condition in the alliance. Speaking of this, Venizelos seems to have opened his mind, and the reason for the encounter between the two countries in this visit suddenly became clear, and his thinking became more and more clear. Also, don't forget, among the three Balkan countries, Greece is the only country with a large-scale navy. As long as the two countries have ideas about the territory of the European part of the Ottoman Empire, they must draw Greece into the alliance, even if the combat effectiveness of the Ottoman navy is in doubt. After all, there are several regular warships, especially the two German 10,000-ton class former dreadnoughts purchased in 1910, and their combat effectiveness should not be underestimated. As for the Bulgarian navy, there are only a few torpedo boats and patrol boats, which are almost negligible. Serbia, as a landlocked country, is even less likely to have a navy. The only remaining European territory of the Ottoman Empire is basically the Balkan Peninsula on the coast of the Aegean Sea. Once the two countries engage in war with the Ottoman Empire, the intended battlefield for the enemy must be in Macedonia and Thrace, since the two countries have no navy. The Ottoman Empire's reinforcements in the Asia Minor Peninsula can support its garrison in the Balkans by means of land and sea. Under the rule of the Ottoman Empire, the roads in the Balkans were almost at the level of the Middle Ages and could be ignored. If you really want to say that there are any large-scale artificial roads, I am afraid that it can be traced back to the roads built there during the Roman Empire. During the Roman Empire, due to the vast territory of the empire and the inconvenience of transportation, in order to maintain the rule, facilitate cultural exchanges within the empire, as well as military purposes and commercial interests, a systematic road system was built within the empire. Similar to the straight road of Deccan, for example, Sofia, the road leading to Constantinople. In the middle and late stages of the Eastern Roman Empire, the national power declined seriously, and I don't know how many times. The Slav barbarians followed this road and marched under the city of Constantinople. In this case, it was more convenient for the Ottoman Empire to provide support from land and sea to the Balkan inland. After all, the efficiency of sea transportation was much higher than that of land transportation at present. The Ottoman Empire still controls the important port city of Thessaloniki in the Aegean Sea in the absence of Greece in the alliance. Once the two countries and the Ottoman Empire go to war in the Balkans, the Ottoman Empire mobilized personnel and materials from other places can calmly enter the Balkan inland area through this port city, and continuously support the battle here of the Ottoman army. These two countries need the Greek navy to cut off the Ottoman Empire's route to support the Balkan battlefield by sea. Otherwise, they will definitely fall into a hard fight, Venizelos said happily. Also, Bulgaria is also a country with coastal areas after all, so they don't worry. Once no one holds down the Ottoman Empire's navy, the two former dreadnoughts of the Ottoman Empire will go north along the Black Smoke coast and shell their important Black Sea in turn. Along the coast, like Varna, it seems to be the only port city in Bulgaria now. Right, there was a hint of Noi on the corner of Venizelos' mouth. The large caliber naval guns on warships have a range of a few kilometers near and a range of more than 10 kilometers. It is used to deal with coastal towns, which is very powerful. Varna is currently the only large-scale port city in Bulgaria. Not long ago, Bulgaria has just connected to the train. Through this port city, you can go directly to Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria. This road is the lifeline of Bulgaria's transportation, so, even if you only add the Greek navy as a bargaining chip and place it on the side of the guarantee game, their winning rate will be greatly improved. Constantine stroked his chin and kept nodding his head. This explanation is indeed reasonable. If you understand it in this way, it seems that the two sides have joined forces to suppress Greece at present, just to bargain, not to completely exclude Greece from the alliance. Only, in this case, the current alliance between the two countries is obviously dominated by Bulgaria, and the strength of Serbia is even weaker than that of Bulgaria. In the war between the two countries in 1885, Serbia was completely defeated. If the Austro-Hungarian Empire did not come forward, I am afraid Belgrade both were occupied by Bulgaria, but the two countries have old grudges. Under such circumstances, for Serbia, there is no difference between an alliance with Greece or an alliance with Bulgaria. Why did Serbia choose Bulgaria silently? Constantine really doesn't understand Serbia's diplomatic choice. www.wuxiaspit.com Serbia's relationship with Austria-Hungary has fallen out since Austria-Hungary forcibly merged with Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1908. Instead, it has a close relationship with Russia. Unsurprisingly, the Russians should have done the work behind the scenes. After all, they are all Slavic brother countries. Venizelos sneered in 1908. The Austro-Hungarian Empire announced the merger of Bosnia and Herzegovina, taking advantage of the internal instability of the Ottoman Empire and the revolution of the Turkish Youth Party. There are a large number of Slavs living in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Obviously, Serbia has ideas for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina is adjacent to Serbia. In Serbia, from the king to the people, almost everyone believes that the territory of Serbia should include Bosnia and Herzegovina. The relationship between Serbia and the Austro-Hungarian Empire was therefore tense. At that time, Russia supported Serbia, which is also a Slavic brother, and strongly opposed the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, while Germany stood behind Austria-Hungary, supported the annexation of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and did not hesitate to issue war intimidation due to the internal turmoil in Russia during the Russo-Japanese War. Russia's strength was weakened. In 1908, its strength had not yet recovered. It could only watch the Austro-Hungarian Empire annex Bosnia and Herzegovina, which made Russia deeply ashamed. Hearing Venizelos explaining the whole story, Constantine sighed in his heart that European diplomatic relations are just like this, intricate and inextricably linked with each other. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 202, Adjusted Army. After the analysis of this senior diplomat, Venizelos, the situation in Europe was clear, and Constantine, who had no doubts, heaved a sigh of relief. There are too many twists and turns in diplomatic work, so, what should Greece do now? Constantine, who was relaxed, picked up the cup on the table, took a sip of tea, and consulted the two of them, judging from the current development of the situation. The contradiction between the two major European blocs is gradually escalating, and the room for easing is getting smaller and smaller. At present, the contradiction between Britain, France, Russia and Germany and Austria is intensifying, whether it is the Moroccan crisis in 1906, or this time, Morocco. Even if the turmoil can finally be resolved through peaceful negotiation, as long as the fundamental contradiction between the two groups cannot be eliminated, a full-scale war between the two groups is imminent. Venizelos said at present, the power of Britain and Germany in Europe is increasing, and Greece is bound to be involved in the battle between the two countries in the Anglo-German dispute. The attitude of the whole Greek society was also contradictory. On the one hand, Greece has been the sphere of influence of Britain and France since its independence in 1821. Politically and economically, Britain and France have a huge influence in Greece. On the other hand, with the rapid development of Germany in recent years, the relationship between the Greek and German royal families is also very close. During this time, Crown Princess Sophie was always frowning because of the tension and deterioration of the British-German relationship caused by the Moroccan issue. The mother of Crown Princess Sophie is Princess Victoria, the eldest daughter of the famous Queen Victoria. Due to the poor relationship between Crown Princess Victoria, Prince Frederick, the father of William II, and other members of the German royal family, Sophie spent a considerable part of her childhood in the UK emotionally. Sophie could not accept the fact that the two Western European countries, where she had the most affection and left the best childhood memories, were on the brink of war at the moment. What is the fundamental contradiction? Emma Inner asked in confusion. As a professional soldier, Emma Inner is not good at politics. He heard Venizelos talking about a fundamental contradiction between the two groups and asked with great interest, the fundamental contradiction between the two groups is the change in national strength, Venizelos said. To be more specific, it is the unbalanced political, economic and military development between Germany and Britain and France. Unless the German helmsman can put the brakes on the roaring German train and bow his head in front of the British, the conflict between the two countries will not be relieved. Constantine and Emma Inner looked at each other and knew in their hearts that this was absolutely impossible. The contradiction between Britain and Germany cannot be simply attributed to the ambition of the German emperor, wanting to rule Europe, and wanting to compete for the land under the sun. Constantine stood up and said, "Don't think too much about it. What is important to Greece is how to expand the interests of Greece in the coming crisis. After all." Zhuanzhen walked into the noisy conference room when the senior officers of the Greek Navy and Army in the conference room saw Constantine ascend to the stage. The heated discussions gradually subsided for these senior officers, although there has been no clear instruction from the top so far. As the elites of the Greek army, since the war between Italy and the Ottoman Empire in North Africa, many people have been unaware to the profound changes in the situation in the Balkans. Because of the war between Italy and the Ottoman Empire, the political landscape in Europe has changed. Affected by this, unexpected events may occur in the Balkan situation. Constantine looked at the many officers in the audience and said solemnly, "The alert level of the Greek army has been raised to the highest level, the state of war, ready for military operations at any time, and the army's logistics personnel will immediately check the armament warehouses at all levels to check for leaks and fill vacancies. After this meeting, you will immediately return to the station where you belonged. From now on, officers and soldiers who are on vacation and visiting relatives will be recalled immediately, and the original plans for military vacations and family visits will be frozen." Constantine's stern gaze. The crowd looked around afterwards. Many officers in the conference room, after giving a military salute to Constantine, left the conference room quickly and skillfully and went to their respective troops stationed. After more than a decade of peace, the Greek army is about to set foot on the battlefield again. Looking at everyone's backs, Constantine glanced at Venizelos, Emma Inner and others, who were on the sidelines. At this moment, everyone was full of anxiety and eagerness to try. After watching the officers leave, the previously bustling conference room turned empty, and Constantine nodded to Emma Inner. Emma Inner, who was instructed, immediately walked to the door and closed the door of the conference room. In the conference room, only the main higher-ranking Greek military and political leaders remained: Crown Prince Constantine, Prime Minister Venizelos, Army Chief of Staff Emmanuel, Armament Minister Giannis, and Navy Commander Kantoriadis. The information you will hear next will be the top secret of the Greek state. Don't reveal it to anyone, Constantine said solemnly to several people. Emmanuel personally hung a map of Greece's military deployment on the wall and explained to several people, in response to the changes in the situation in the Balkans, the General Staff follows His Majesty's order to adjust the deployment of the Greek army. At present, there are 15 infantry divisions in Greece, including 8 main divisions, 7 elite divisions, with a total of 112,000 people, which are not enough to deal with the situation in the Balkans. Therefore, I suggest that the army immediately secretly prepare for troop mobilization and be ready to respond at any time. General mobilization. Constantine still sighed in his heart after listening to Emma Inner's report. According to the estimates of the General Staff, Bulgaria can recruit 350,000 to 400,000 troops in the extreme state during the war, and even the slightly weaker Serbia can have 200,000 to 250,000 troops. As for Greece, according to the estimates of the General Staff, the strength of the Greek army after general mobilization is about 250,300. As for Among the three Balkan countries, Greece has the strongest comprehensive strength, but its army mobilization potential is not as good as Bulgaria. The reason is very simple, that is, Greece's special geographical situation. www.wuxiaspit.com makes Greece have to spend a lot of money funds invested in expensive naval construction after getting Albania. Greece's coastline stretches from the Adriatic Sea, where Albania is located, to the vicinity of Thessaloniki in the northern Aegean Sea. It is about 5,000 kilometers long. On such a long coastline, many large cities in Greece, such as the economic and political centers of Athens, Durrës, and Vlora are all seaport cities. Under such circumstances, there is no navy in Greece's national defense force that can be justified, and Greece's military and political leaders may be awakened from their dreams. However, Bulgaria and Serbia do not have such a drag. They do not need to put their already very tight military expenditures into the mouth of the navy, the gold-swallowing beast. At the same time, the specific garrison position will also be changed. After the adjustment, the Greek army will be divided into two main armies. One is the Albanian Legion, which includes 7 divisions. After mobilization, it is about 110,000 people, stationed in Albania near Tirana. The other legion, the Macedonian Legion, was stationed on the Greco-Ottoman border near Thessaloniki, with a strength of about 8 divisions, and after mobilization, the number of troops was about 130,000. The latest chapter address of the Roman Road in Greece, https:// read the full text of the Greek Road to Rome, https://Greece_s Roman Road txt download address, https:// Greek Road to Rome mobile reading, https:// For the convenience of reading next time, you can click the favorites below to record the reading record of this time. The army adjusted in chapter 201. And you can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. If you like Greece and Roman Road, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, Wetchet, etc. Thank you for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203, Diplomatic. After expounding the General Staff's adjustment plan for the army, Emmanuel pointed the baton at the corresponding position on the map, looked around the crowd, and continued, after such adjustment, once there is trouble in the Macedonian region, the two major legions, the Albanian Legion attacked from the southwest to the southeast, cutting into the Macedonian interior, attracting the attention of the Ottoman troops stationed in the Macedonian area, sharing the pressure on the north of the Macedonian Legion, and covering the Macedonian Legion's flank. And the most important goal of the Macedonian Legion is to restore Thessaloniki, Emma said solemnly. If all goes well, after the Macedonian Legion successfully occupied Thessaloniki, in addition to the remaining troops, the rest of the troops will march northward and form a pincer attack with the Macedonian Legion to attack the remaining Ottoman troops in North Macedonia. Constantine frowned and interjected, Thessaloniki is not so easy to take down. After the defeat of the last war, the territory of Greece and the Ottomans changed, and the new border between the two countries is not far from Thessaloniki, causing Thessaloniki to almost become a border city of the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman army built a series of permanent fortifications near Thessaloniki, including bunkers and trenches. The Ottoman army lost Thessaloniki in the last war, which led to a direct failure of the war. Naturally, a lesson was learned, Venizelos said, with the help of Rudiger, the soldiers sent by Germany to the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans built a large number of fortifications on the Greek-Ottoman border, mainly 2 fortresses, the fortress of Bajani and the fortress of Kastritsa. The Ottoman army built a large number of concrete bunkers, artillery and machine gun positions, trenches, barbed wire and searchlights according to the German designs. There are 35,000 guards in these 2 fortress areas alone. These 2 fortresses are located in strategic locations, and they can also watch each other with the city of Thessaloniki. In a well-defended and well-prepared area like this, if the army forces a forcible attack, I'm afraid the casualties will be very heavy. While expounding on the crimes of the Germans, Venizelos carefully observed Constantine's reaction, as if he wanted to get the crown prince's opinion on the Germans. Although he was reluctant to stand on the opposite side of Germany, the Germans were getting closer and closer to the Ottoman Empire, which made Venizelos feel very uncomfortable after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in 1897. Germany sent a large amount of arms to the Ottoman army. The number of military personnel stationed in the pass greatly increased, and quickly helped the Ottoman army to regroup. Compared with the Ottoman Empire in 1897, the current Ottoman Empire's military strength has not decreased. Anti-increase Emmanuel hesitated for a moment, and said in a deep voice, "At present, this plan is still a prototype, and the general idea of combat operations. As for how to deal with the specific situation after the outbreak of the war, it is still necessary to adapt to the situation and respond flexibly." Hearing that Emmanuel, the chief of the general staff, had finished explaining, Constantine said to the Minister of Armaments, Giannis, who was sitting opposite him, "After this meeting is over, you can inform the Greek military industry and ask them to take action now. There is no need to hesitate any longer to run the production line of weapons and ammunition with full force." December 13, 1911, early morning, in the gardens of the Royal Palace in Syntagma Square, Greece. The British ambassador to Athens, Lord Tristan, is communicating with a young man in naval uniform. "Henry, you have been in close contact with the Greek Navy for nearly a few months. How is the strength of the Greek Navy? Do you think they are the opponents of the Ottoman Navy?" Sitting with Lord Tristan and talking was Captain Henry of the Royal Navy, who came to help the Greek Navy train at the request of the Greek Navy. Henry picked up the black teacup, took a sip, and moistened his throat. "The training of the Greek Navy is strictly in accordance with the training regulations of the Royal Navy. As far as I know, the Greek naval commander, General Kantoridis, set up his office directly on the newly commissioned Trikoupis battlecruiser. If it is not necessary, he will hardly disembark and lead by example. Therefore, in the event of a war, the Greek Navy can be prepared within 2 hours' action." Having said this, Henry's mouth leaked a hint of sarcasm. "As for the Ottoman Navy, although I have not had direct contact with it, I have communicated with the instructors sent by the Royal Navy to the Ottoman Navy." "What is their evaluation of the Ottoman Navy?" Henry shook his head. "Near the pier in Constantinople, you can often see Ottoman navies in navy uniforms in taverns. Many drunkards fight after getting drunk, or blackmail people in businesses on the street. Although there are many factors that affect the outcome of the war, including some unexpected factors, I am still not optimistic about the confrontation between the Ottoman Navy and the Greek Navy in the Aegean Sea." When the two were communicating, Constantine and King George came to the two of them one after the other. "The recent situation in the Balkans has been mysterious. King George wants to know the British government's thoughts on the Balkans. The attitude of the British directly affects the direction of Greece's subsequent Balkan policy." After the chat, everyone took their seats, and Constantine said, "I vaguely heard the two of them talking about the navies of the two countries, and I am also curious." Hearing this, Lord Tristan and Henry smiled at each other, nodded to each other, and then the two repeated what they just said. "Although the quality of the Greek Navy's personnel is better, the Ottoman Navy's warships are more advanced and powerful," Constantine said meaningfully. Neither Tristan nor Henry knew what Constantine meant. The British had just received a super-large order from the Ottoman Empire, 2 ultra-dreadnought warships. This involved a naval competition between Greece and the Ottoman Empire in the last war. The Ottomans suffered from the weakness of the navy, and naturally they also paid attention to the navy after the news of the service of the 2 Invincible-class war cruisers of the Greek Navy spread. The Ottoman Navy, as a direct imaginary enemy, immediately felt a threat, and the Ottoman Navy was once again in a weak position. The 2 former dreadnoughts the Navy purchased from Germany, 2 Brandenburg-class warships, will be the opponents of the 2 cutting-edge battlecruisers. The Invincible-class battlecruiser purchased by Greece from the United Kingdom has almost all-round overwhelming advantages in speed, firepower, armor and other aspects when facing the German Brandenburg-class former dreadnought. After Italy, an ally of Germany, fought against the Ottoman Empire for Libya, the confidence of the Ottoman Empire in the Germans was shaken, because the Germans could not effectively restrain their younger brothers, which made the Ottoman Empire begin to rebuild. Examining his own foreign policy, the big brother who was struggling to find him seems unable to cover himself. The Ottoman Empire, which was caught in the war with Italy, probably for the sake of pleasing the British, released news a few days ago that it intends to place an order at the British Armstrong shipyard to purchase 2 cutting-edge super dreadnought warships. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click favorites below to record the reading record of this, Chapter 202 Diplomacy, and you can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. If you like Greece and Roman Road, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, Watchit, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 204, Diplomacy. 2. Tristan and Colonel Henry looked at each other, and naturally understood that Constantine was dissatisfied with Britain's sale of the latest super-dreadnought warships to the Ottomans. His Majesty the King, His Royal Highness, the Ottoman government has conveyed an application to our country for the purchase of super-dreadnought ships. As far as I know, the House of Representatives has different opinions on this matter, and many members believe that powerful super-dreadnought warships will be sold to the Ottoman Empire. It was too involved, Tristan explained. Will the deputies have trouble with their own business? Constantine said in Noy's tone. King George looked puzzled, but Lord Tristan and Captain Henry understood those big arms industries in Britain are the industries of those parliamentarians. For example, the two major warship manufacturing giants in the United Kingdom, Vickers and Armstrong shipyards, in order to develop relations with a high-level government, obtain warship manufacturing orders from the Admiralty. Many members of the Parliament have become shareholders of these two shipyards. There is a media sarcasm in the UK that Vickers Dockyard is the mother of the British Parliament. This is what Constantine said. The councillor in his own business will not fail. The price of Ottoman's two super-dreadnought warships should be at least more than £5 million. Such a huge order and its huge profits make it impossible for the bosses of these shipyards, MPs, to refuse. Lord Tristan sighed inwardly. His family knew his own affairs, and he naturally understood the enormous energy contained in the British military-industrial complex. Inciting Italy to capture Libya, in addition to embarrassing the Germans, also means beating the Ottoman Empire. After the outbreak of the Libyan War, the Ottoman Empire was also very good, and immediately went to the United Kingdom to place an order, hoping to use this huge warship order to regain the support of the British in the current Anglo-German naval competition in full swing. British MPs are clamoring, for every capital ship the Germans build, we will build too. This move is not purely out of the national interest, but also the interests of the legislators. Without the naval competition, the legislature would not have allocated a huge amount of funds for shipbuilding, and there would be no way to put taxpayer money into its own pockets. Lord Tristan, once the super-dreadnought warship appears in the Dardanelles, it will seriously affect the naval balance in the surrounding area, Constantine said sternly. When Naval Commander Cantaratus heard the news that the Ottoman government had released the purchase of British super-dreadnought warships, he immediately came to the Prime Minister's office and asked Prime Minister Venizelos to immediately allocate funds to purchase the new warships to deal with the threat of the Ottoman Navy. The two had a heated argument in the office about increasing the Navy's military spending. Afterwards, Venizelos also complained to Constantine. Greece's finances have now reached its limit. The previous plan for the construction of the Navy needs to allocate 250 million to 300 million funds. In addition to maintaining the normal expenditure of the government, in view of the current tension in the Balkans, the expansion of the company is also imminent. In order to cope with the imminent situation in Macedonia, the logistics department has begun to hoard materials, which must be another huge expenditure. Constantine also understood that it was impossible for Greece to continue to increase its naval expenditure, so he also planned to organize the Ottomans to acquire these two super-dreadnought warships in the near future. His Royal Highness, although the Ottomans intend to buy new warships, you don't have to worry so much. As far as I know, at least until the end of this war, the Italian-Austrian War, our government will not respond to the request of the Ottoman Empire. Lord Tristan said calmly. As soon as the news spread in London, Russian and Italian diplomats in London expressed opposition. It is normal for Italy to oppose. The two countries are currently at war. Italy took advantage of its own navy to take the lead. The navy and army cooperated and occupied almost all the coastal cities in northern Libya. Russia and the Ottoman Empire are neighbors themselves, bordering the Caucasus and facing each other across the Black Sea. After the Russo-Japanese War, Russia's navy, which originally ranked at the forefront of the world's naval tonnage ranking, was hit hard by the Japanese. In recent years, it has been silently licking its wounds. The main energy of the entire country is mainly used for economic reform and domestic politics. The strength of the Russian Navy has not recovered. If the two Ottoman super-dreadnought warships enter the strait, it is bound to increase the pressure on the Russian Black Sea Fleet. So, under the protests of the two countries, in order not to cause diplomatic disputes, even if our country finally decides to release the latest super-dreadnought battleship, it is estimated that it will be a year later, Lord Tristan explained patiently to Constantine. As an ambassador of a country, it is the responsibility of the ambassador to maintain the good relationship between the host country and the home country. will write a report to remind the country to pay attention to the naval balance in the eastern Mediterranean and Black Sea regions. Hearing that Ottoman's purchase of the ship could be delayed for a while, Constantine's originally serious face softened a little, but he has been frequently entangled by Cantaratus recently, begging Constantine to agree to increase the Navy's funds. The construction of super-dreadnought warships can be as fast as 1 year or as slow as 2 years. It is now the end of 1911. As long as the purchase of the ships by the Ottoman Empire can be delayed for about a year, it has reached a very delicate time point. The expectations of the Ottomans to acquire warships had many twists and turns. It would be better for these two warships to still suffer from their historical doom. Constantine nodded and then asked, "Lord Tristan, what do you think of the current situation in the Balkans? Since the war broke out between Italy and the Ottoman Empire, the situation in the Balkans has been turbulent. Serbia and Bulgaria are privately involved, and excluding Greece, it is natural to give them some eye drops. As far as I know, the two countries seem to have reached an agreement on something at the moment. The two Slavic countries seem to have the support of the Russians." Lord Tristan took a sip of tea and said, "Not only that. I heard that the Austrian army has been mobilized in the area on the border of Orsay, but Austria strongly opposes the expansion of Slavic forces in the Balkans. Bulgaria and Serbia are both Slavic, language allies, and even religions, due to historical reasons, are the same Orthodox Church as Russia, which makes the cultures of the three countries have similarities. Taken together, these three countries have too many reasons come together. It is no wonder that in order to make Serbia and Bulgaria independent from the rule of the Ottoman Empire, the Russians did not hesitate to go out in person and start a military confrontation with the Ottoman Empire. "Where did you get this news?" King George asked in surprise. www.uxias.com. The British ambassador to Sofia. In fact, since the war between the Ottoman Empire and Italy and North Africa, the British Foreign Office has been very focused on the development of the situation in the Balkans. The ambassador to Sofia visited the Bulgarian Prime Minister several times to explore Bulgaria's diplomatic trends. Lord Tristan said frankly, "Serbia and Bulgaria are united, and the primary enemy is also the Ottoman Empire. Why is Austria's reaction so fierce, and the army has been partially mobilized?" King George asked inexplicably. Lord Tristan took a slow sip of tea and said slowly, "Because in the agreement reached between Bulgaria and Serbia, both parties support the obligation to liberate the Slavs inhabited areas in the Balkan Peninsula and oppose the third country's encroachment on the Slavs' territory." Constantine and King George looked at each other, and both knew in their hearts that this line was obviously aimed at Austria. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click the favorites below to record the reading record of this time. Chapter 203 Diplomacy 2, and you can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. If you like Greece and Roman Road, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, Wedget, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 205, Silent Game. In 1908, Austria took advantage of the Ottoman civil strife, Turkish Shabab Revolution, and with the support of Germany, announced the annexation of the Slavic region of Bosnia and Herzegovina. At that time, the whole country of Serbia was boiling, and Russia also expressed strong dissatisfaction with Austria's unilateral annexation. Unfortunately, Russia had just experienced the Russo-Japanese War at that time, and the domestic situation was chaotic. Germany stood behind Austria again, and did not hesitate to issue a war threat to Russia to help its ally Austria annex Bosnia. Relations between Serbia and Austria have been sour since then, and it's no wonder that Austria reacted strongly when it learned of the secret alliance between Bulgaria and Serbia, the two main Slavic states in the Balkans. Constantine pondered for a moment. Obviously, the tension between Austria and Serbia was in Greece's favor. Lord Tristan cleared his throat and said, "The foreign policy of the British Empire on the Balkans has not changed. We still prefer to maintain the balance of the situation in the Balkans and oppose the countries in the region using violent means to change the status quo of territorial ownership. Your Majesty the King, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, the current situation in Europe is already very delicate. The Germans are ambitiously seeking the status of European hegemony. Once a military conflict occurs in the Balkans, it is likely to trigger a chain reaction." Speaking of this, probably to express his attitude clearly, Tristan said sternly, "Once the tragic war that swept the whole of Europe broke out, the Balkan countries as the birthplace of the war would definitely suffer heavy losses. Everyone, this is not an alarmist." Lord Tristan spoke sharply, expressing Britain's position, and everyone was silent for a moment. It is easy to understand that the UK wants to maintain the status quo. As a world hegemon, the existing international order itself is established by the UK. Under this system, the UK is the biggest beneficiary. From this perspective, the UK has good reason to support the status quo. This is not a new point of view. Constantine was non-committal about the position expressed by Tristan, and instead asked, and what does the British government think of the war between Italy and the Ottomans? It is difficult to agree with such a contradictory policy of saying that it supports the maintenance of the status quo. Hearing Constantine asking about the Italian-Austrian war, Lord Tristan's tone was a little slower, according to the opinions conveyed at home. In order to prevent the war from expanding and causing further tension among European countries, this war will be a local war. The main battlefield will be limited to Libya in order to strengthen the persuasion. Tristan further said, Britain and France will urge Italy to do this. Seeing that there was no fresh information to be asked from Tristan, Constantine stood up, shook hands with Tristan and Henry, and said, "That's it for today's meeting, two gentlemen. Thank you two for visiting today." Not long after the housekeeper led the two guests out of the garden, Venizelos hurriedly arrived and reported to the two, "Your Majesty the King, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, regarding the diplomatic letter sent by Greece to the governments of Serbia and Bulgaria, invites the prime ministers of the two countries to come to Athens for a meeting. After separate messages from our ambassadors in Belgrade and Sofia, the two governments' attitudes were vague, neither refusing nor agreeing. In order to reach an alliance with the two countries as soon as possible, Venizelos decided to take a positive attitude after consulting with Constantine, clearly showing Greece's attitude and inviting the two prime ministers to visit Athens. Today, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs received visits from the ambassadors of the two countries in Athens at the same time. I just met the ambassadors of the two countries at the prime minister's residence. Instead, they expressed their desire to invite Greece to visit Sofia. Constantine's brows loosened, and he was a little amused by the choice of the meeting place for the three kingdoms. Your Majesty the King, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, this seems a bit funny. The three countries are procrastinating for the meeting place, which seems a bit stupid, Venizelos immediately explained when he saw Constantine's expression. In fact, the choice of location is very meaningful. If Greece agrees to the three prime ministers' negotiation of alliance matters in Sofia, it means that Greece has surrendered, recognized the strength of Bulgaria, and joined the alliance system dominated by Bulgaria. Then, during the negotiation, it is bound to be on the issue of the division of interests. Leaning towards Bulgaria, Venizelos explained solemnly, on the contrary, if the meeting place is chosen in Athens, it means that the two countries agree that Greece is the strongest among the three countries. This alliance is concluded with the theme of Greece, while Bulgaria and Serbia are in a subordinate position. After such an explanation from Venizelos, Constantine nodded, indicating that he understood. He originally thought that the choice of the meeting place was an insignificant matter, but he did not expect such an important relationship. The game between the three countries has now begun. Serbia needs Bulgaria's support on the issue of the Slavs in the Balkans, and is currently facing strong pressure from Austria, so it stands on the Bulgarian side, Venizelos said solemnly. Then, what should we do now, just like this? Constantine didn't quite understand this kind of foreign affairs. Venizelos shrugged and said, the first issue between the three countries has already begun, and now it depends on who will surrender first. By the way, what does Lord Tristan say? Do the British have any new views on the situation in the Balkans? Constantine shook his head. No, it's still some old-fashioned question. Still want to keep the situation in the Balkans stable. Constantine repeated to Venizelos the views expressed by Lord Tristan on behalf of the British government. What do you think of the British view? Can it be done? King George asked Venizelos. Impossible, Your Majesty. First of all, if the war between Italy and the Ottoman Empire is mainly limited to North Africa, the battlefield will continue for a long time. The two sides have reached a stalemate. The coastal area of Libya is currently at a stalemate due to the superiority of the Italian navy. All have been occupied by the Italian army. It's not the case in the interior of Libya. www.uxiaspit.com. The nomadic tribes in the interior of Libya are not easy to mess with. They are flexible, fierce in character, and have huge advantages in cavalry. There are unobstructed deserts in the Gobi, and the Italian army is fundamentally. There is no good way. In order to quickly end the war, Italy will inevitably seek breakthroughs from other directions and force the Ottoman government to submit. For example, taking advantage of the Italian navy, shelling the Aegean coast of Asia Minor, exerting pressure, and even blocking shipping in the Dardanelles. Therefore, the so-called confinement of the war to North Africa is simply deceiving ghosts. In addition, Bulgaria and Serbia have close relations with Russia, and the UK has limited influence on these two countries, and there is no good way to prevent the two countries from running rampant. Constantine nodded. Now Russia, after the reform of Stolypin, the economy has recovered. After the tentacles of the original expansion to East Asia were cut off by the Japanese, attention turned to the Balkans again, and impatiently wanted to play in the Balkans. Influence. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click favorites below to record the reading record of this, chapter 204 Silent Game, and you can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. If you like Greece and Roman Road, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, Wedget, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 206, Stalemate. King George heard that the two of them were not in awe of the British Balkan balance policy preached by Lord Tristan. Hearing King George's worries, Constantine thought about it and was able to measure King George in the hearts of the older generation of politicians like King George. The UK holds a lot of prestige, and they are used to the impression that the British play an important role in the world political arena and cannot be defied because in their long time in power, they have witnessed too many instances of Britain's tyrannical and domineering decision to determine the fate of small countries. No country on the European continent has dared to confront the British Empire head-on since the Napoleonic Wars. Despite the changing times, the development of the international situation, and the ebb and flow of national strength, the older generation of politicians like King George are not used to ignoring the British. In the eyes of the British, Greece is their sphere of influence, but that does not mean that Greece has to ask the British for instructions on everything, and dare not step beyond the red line they have drawn. His Majesty, Constantine explained in a warm voice. In fact, what kind of policy the British should adopt in relation to the current situation in the Balkans, they may not have really figured it out themselves. The original words of the Lord Tristan just now were, they tend to maintain the situation in the Balkans. The British themselves are hesitant, and their attitude is not clear. Constantine continued to explain in order to allay King George's concerns. King George nodded thoughtfully. His expression was a little lonely, and his warm eyes revealed reminiscence of the past. Although I am a little unwilling, but I am indeed old, and the older a person is, the more inclined he is to be conservative and hate radicals' action. After that, he looked at Constantine and Venizelos, and said in an exhorting tone, I still want to remind you that war risks are extremely risky. In fact, it is no different from gambling. Both sides put all the chips on it. Bet to win or lose, until the real result is revealed. No one knows what the outcome of a war will be, even if it is a war that seems to have a good chance of winning. The hidden risks are not necessarily small. Seeing that the two of them listened to their words carefully, took a sip of tea, and said unhurriedly, in the Russo-Japanese War, who would think that the Japanese would be able to defeat the European road roller, Russia, Italian army of tens of thousands went to Ethiopia. Who would have expected the Italians to be defeated by African black chiefs? Poor Italian. The embarrassing thing was once again brought out and flagged. If these things are too far from Greece, let's say that the ongoing war in North Africa is now going on. Before the war, the Italians were confident that it would be over in a few months, as long as the Italian navy blocked the coast and cut off the Ottomans' foreign aid, and then occupying several important cities along the coast. You can declare the war over. Very confusing, isn't it? What's the result? Until now, there is no sign of the end of the war anyway. An accident has occurred. Those nomads in Libya are surprisingly difficult to deal with. The Italians are now in a dilemma. Every day the war is prolonged, it will consume a huge amount of money, resources and money. King George said with a serious expression, military adventure is something that must be done with caution, especially now. The price of failure in a full-scale war with the entire country as a bet is too great, and it is very likely that a country will never recover. Winning, of course, is a good thing, and losing, everything is over. Having said that, King George stood up, picked up the hat on the table, put it on, and left the Civil War. How important is the outcome of a war? Especially now that the whole world is facing a special period of transition to a capitalist country. In the words of Li Hongzhang, this is a major change unseen in 1,000 years. In 1894, the Sino-Japanese War occurred between Japan and the Qing dynasty. After the war, the fates of the two countries were completely different, and the cost of a war was vividly displayed before this war. The Qing dynasty, at least on the bright side, still maintained its status as a great power. Although the two Opium Wars were fiasco, they lost to the world hegemon, Britain before the Sino-Japanese War. The situation between Japan and Qing was almost the same, and they were both semi-feudal and semi-colonial countries after the First Sino-Japanese War. The two countries went completely different paths. One was promoted to become a great power, and the other was completely reduced to fish belly. The success or failure of a war has far-reaching significance and influence, completely changing the fate of the two countries until the 21st century. Japan's per capita GDP is still 3 times that of China, and the differences and impacts of this war on the two countries still exist for Greece at this time. It is also facing an urgent need for industrialization. Over the past 2 years, Greece's economic development has also slowed down year by year. Barren resources, a small market, and a sparse population have made the development of Greece's industry face more and more challenges. The current economic scale of Greece is completely insufficient to support the development of a well-developed industrial system. Greece's only industry of note at present, the textile industry, is also facing fierce competition in the international market. No way, for any country that has an idea for industrialization, the textile industry is the first threshold that needs to be crossed. As a traditional industry, the barriers of the textile industry are really not strong. After pondering for a moment, Venizelos said, "His Majesty the King is right, military adventures do require caution. Once Greece goes to war with the Ottoman Empire again, it must be a victory. We cannot afford the price of failure." Constantine nodded in agreement. On the one hand, prepare for war, and on the other hand, watch the changes in the situation with a cold eye. Anyway, the stalemate between Italy and the Ottomans will continue, and the war that will determine Libya will continue. Greece's two east and west neighbors, the Kingdom of Italy and the Ottoman Empire, are locked in a stalemate and continue to weaken each other, which is a good thing for Greece now. Time is on Greece's side. Whether it is the stalemate between Italy and Austria in the North African battlefield, or the patient competition between the two countries, Greece should not be the one to worry. Tatoi Palace. Green grass grows in a horse pen surrounded by a wooden fence. Constantine holds his daughter, Princess Helen, 14, on a black horse. Helen, sitting at the front of the saddle, a pair of fleshy little hands, kept stroking the elegant and slender mane at the neck of the horse. Constantine carefully controlled the reins. www.wuxiaspit.com and drove the horses around the circular wooden fence. The seated horse seemed a little excited, snorted and trotted in circles. "Helen, how about the black pearl your uncle gave you?" Sophie, who was standing outside the fence, asked the father and daughter on horseback. "This horse is so beautiful, I really like it," giggled Helen in her petite riding suit and little leather boots. "This horse is William I, a 14th birthday gift to his niece, Princess Helen." Frisian horses, known as the black pearls of horses, have no variegation on the whole body. The whole body is jet black, the fur is shiny like forging, the neck and the tail have a vigorous mane, and the streamlined muscles of the whole body are rhythmic when running. While the father and daughter were playing, Prime Minister Venizelos hurried to the horse pen. After greeting Sophie, he turned his attention to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince on horseback. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click the favorites below to record the reading record of this, Chapter 205 Stalemate, and you can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. If you like Greece and Roman Road, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, Widget, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 207, The Three Prime Ministers Meet. Seeing the visiting Prime Minister Venizelos, he couldn't hide the anxiety on his face. Constantine did not dare to neglect, and immediately handed the reins in his hand to Sophie. What happened? Constantine and Venizelos were walking on the tree-lined path in the manor, and asked when they saw Venizelos' preoccupied appearance. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has just received news that the Bulgarian Prime Minister has cryptically disclosed to the ambassador to Sofia, Bulgaria, that Bulgaria and Serbia have secretly formed an alliance, Venizelos said with a serious face. Constantine was stunned for a moment, wondering what the Bulgarians meant by this move, and said eagerly, "So, what is the content of the treaty signed by the two parties?" The time has come to March 1912, and the battle for Libya between the Ottomans and the Italians is still ongoing. Although the three Balkan countries all have the intention of forming an alliance, in order to compete for nominal dominance, Greece and Bulgaria have been at a stalemate, hoping that the other side will submit to its own will. Affected by this, the diplomatic contacts between the two sides have been stuck here and cannot move forward. After many negotiations, the two sides have signed a covenant, The two sides guarantee each other the independence and territorial integrity of their respective countries. If one of them is violated by other countries, the other side should give full support. The two sides agreed to attack Turkey when the time was right, and defend Austria in the north when they attacked Turkey in the south. The two sides also reached an agreement on the dismemberment of the Macedonian area, and marked the disputed area, and agreed to select Russian Tsar Nicholas II as the arbiter when dividing the disputed area. Constantine's face was gloomy, and he was very dissatisfied with a private treaty signed between the two countries. The alliance of the two countries did not consider Greece's territorial claims at all. For what purpose did the Bulgarian side leak the treaty between the two countries to Ambassador Brugge? Constantine wondered. The intention of this move is obvious, it is to put pressure on us. The Bulgarians know very well that without Greece joining, their small group may not be an opponent of the Ottoman Empire. Even if the energy of the Ottoman Empire is now attracted by Italy, Venice Ross said angrily. Obviously, this little trick could not hide the sharp eyes of this prime minister who is proficient in diplomatic work. Noticing that Venizelos hesitated to speak, Constantine said, besides the secret alliance between the two countries, is there anything else? The Italians were eager to end the war, but the military operations in Libya did not go well. In order to force the Ottoman authorities to give up their resistance as soon as possible, the Italian navy occupied the Dodecanese Islands, and also sent warships to bombard the cities of Asia Minor along the Aegean Sea. Venizelos said melancholy. The Dodecanese Islands, which means Dodecanese in Greek, are mainly inhabited by Greeks and are currently under the rule of the Ottoman Empire. The Dodecanese Islands are located in the southwest of Asia Minor, close to the peninsula of Asia Minor, and their geographical location is very important. The Italians gained control of the Dodecanese, increasing Italian influence in the Aegean. When Constantine heard the news, although he was full of unhappiness, there was nothing he could do. Although the Dodecanese Islands are basically Greeks, they belong to the Ottoman Empire. Now that Italy has seized control of the islands from the Ottoman Empire, Greece has no choice but to be dissatisfied. Greece's navy is too weak to match the Italian navy at all. Moreover, the situation in the Balkans is imminent and does not allow Greece to focus on the Aegean coast reasonably. The Balkans are a higher priority option. Regarding the alliance, don't delay any longer. You should immediately start diplomatic contacts with Bulgaria and Serbia to discuss the alliance, Constantine said. After all, the Greek diaspora in the Balkans, according to rough estimates by the Greek government, is no less than 4 million people. This number is almost the same as the current population in Greece. It is impossible for Constantine not to pay attention. In May 1912, after several months of delay, the three countries finally decided to win Ligacha, the capital of Montenegro, to hold a joint meeting of the prime ministers of the three countries to discuss the appropriateness of the alliance of the three countries. Prime Minister Pasic of Serbia, Prime Minister Jesif of Bulgaria, and Prime Minister Venizelos of Greece. The three prime ministers will gather in the capital of Montenegro, Budrigacha Bold Ligacha, Lavida Hotel. In the conference hall, the prime ministers of the three countries had their first contact. The prime ministers of the three countries are sitting around the round table and are negotiating on the alliance. Serbia needs the Kosovo region and northern Macedonia. In addition, we hope that Serbia can get northern Albania so that Serbia can get an outlet to the Adriatic Sea, Serbian Prime Minister Pasic said. First, as a landlocked country, Serbia is really fed up with the lack of coastal commercial ports since independence. Due to inconvenient transportation, both import and export have been limited by the jurisdiction of neighboring countries, which has led to the slow development of Serbia's commerce and trade, which has seriously affected Serbia's economic development. Serbia must gain access to the sea for shipping and trade in this war. This is the unanimous opinion of Serbia. With a gloomy face, Venizelos sneered. A territorial claim to Greece? Prime Minister Pasic, are you sure you didn't come to declare war on Greece? Pasic probably thought that Greece was alone and wanted to cut some flesh on Greece. After all, Venizelos ignored the whimsical Pasic, and turned to Prime Minister Gassif and asked patiently, so, what are Bulgaria's territorial claims? Bulgaria must get the Macedonian region, including Thessaloniki. Prime Minister Gassif was also unceremonious, reaching out and pointing on the map of the Balkans hanging on the wall. Although Bulgaria is not a landlocked country, not as bad as Serbia, it is not much better either. Bulgaria's seaports are all located on the Black Sea coast, which leads to Bulgaria's import and export ships, except for the trade in the Black Sea, all passing through the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus. This situation made Bulgaria's overseas trade extremely vulnerable to the influence of the Ottoman Empire. For now, since the start of the Italian-Turkish War, Bulgaria has been on the border of Austria, and the army has moved frequently, and has made no secret of its coveting the territory of the Ottoman Empire. www.wuxyaspit.com for revenge. The Ottoman Empire has banned Bulgaria. Ships pass through the strait. Bulgaria is naturally salivating for Thessaloniki, an important seaport and transportation hub in the Aegean Sea, and is bound to win. After listening to the demands of the two countries, Venizelos was furious. According to the territorial division of the two countries, the territory of the Ottoman Empire in the Balkans has almost been divided up, and there is nothing to do with Greece at all. According to such a division method, the direction of Greece's expansion to the Balkans is completely blocked. Venizelos' face was ashen, and he said sternly, "I need to remind the two prime ministers that your request should be more reasonable." In addition, among the three countries, Greece has the strongest comprehensive strength, and Greece's territorial claims should be respected. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click on the favorites below to record the reading record of this, Chapter 206 Meeting of the Prime Ministers of the Three Kingdoms, and you can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. If you like Greece and Roman Road, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, Wetchet, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 208, Warming Up for War. Pasek and Jesif met their eyes, and they both knew in their hearts that if it wasn't for the lack of strength between the two countries, they would not want Greece to join this alliance. Pasek asked, "So, Prime Minister Venizelos, what are Greece's territorial claims?" Since the two countries agreed to invite Greece to join the alliance, they were naturally psychologically prepared, and it was impossible for Greece to gain nothing in Macedonia. Venizelos also understood in his heart that the three countries were able to sit together to discuss an alliance. To a large extent, the Ottoman Empire was caught in a war with Italy, which gave the three countries an opportunity. Everyone didn't mind taking advantage of the Ottoman Empire's unpreparedness. Osman recovered some interest. The 1885 war between the two countries is probably still fresh in the memory of the people on both sides. It would be nonsense to say that the two countries have now given up their quarrels and reconciled. The Macedonian region is in the crack between Paul, Serbia, and Greece. The moment when the three countries divided up, I am afraid it will be the time of filth. Therefore, the three kingdoms are all thinking the same at this time, and they all want to cut the fattest piece of cake from Macedonia. Venizelos avoided the important and avoided the more controversial Macedonia area first. The people living on the Aegean Islands under the Ottoman Empire are almost all Greeks. Therefore, these islands in the Aegean Sea should belong to Greece. After he finished speaking, he looked at the two of them and made up his mind. If the two of them disagreed on this point, then let this alliance go to hell. The Aegean Sea covers an area of 214,000 square kilometers. It is the only sea area connecting the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, and its strategic value is very high. The Aegean Sea is dotted with about 2,500 islands. When the two heard the territorial claim of Venizelos, the islands of the Ottoman Empire in the Aegean Sea, they had no idea what they thought, and they did not express their opposition on the surface. As Venizelos said, there is a large Greek population living on those islands. Secondly, the two countries do not have navies, and these islands would have to be occupied by the Greek navy themselves. Seeing that the two did not comment, Venizelos continued, the whole of Macedonia including Thessaloniki. Seeing their faces changed, they continued, Greek warriors have been fighting there for many years. It can be said that in most parts of Macedonia, the rural people there are interested in Greece. Greece has good reasons to claim territorial ownership there. In recent years, with the weakening of the Ottoman Empire's control over Macedonia after 1897, especially after the uprising of the Turkish al-Shabaab, the vast countryside in Macedonia was almost out of the control of the Ottoman government, except for those big cities, and some the military stronghold where the army is stationed. The Ottoman government still has influence secretly. The three countries have already launched their operations to compete for Macedonia. Greece took advantage of its economic advantages, and the government, either overtly or covertly, used public opinion to mobilize personnel and funds to support underground guerrillas and compete in the Macedonian countryside. In terms of competing for Macedonian territory, Greece still has a geographical advantage. After the last war, Greece obtained the entire Albania and part of Macedonian territory. Among them, the territory of Albania showed a north-south direction, allowing Greece's territory to gain a great deal from the Balkans' depth. The entire Greek territory is semi-encircled by Macedonia. From Albania to the east, or from the northern part of Greece to the north, it is easy to penetrate into Macedonia. The underground order in Macedonia, after more than 10 years of open and secret infighting among the three kingdoms, is mostly under the control of Greece. It is impossible for Greece to surrender Macedonia, which has cost so much to control. Prime Minister Jessuph's face tightened, and Greece almost made demands on the whole of Macedonia. This will not only make Bulgaria lose Thessaloniki, an important commercial port and transportation hub city throughout the Balkans, and lose shipping and trade convenience, it will also interrupt the Bulgarian dream of the Great Bulgaria Plan. The 10th Russo-Turkish War, 1877–1878, ended with the signing of the Treaty of San Stefano, which cost the Ottoman Empire large swathes of territory. Pressed by the Russian army, the Sultan was forced to sign the covenant under the city. Recognizing the existence of Greater Bulgaria, one of the contents of the Treaty of San Stefano is the establishment of the Great Bulgarian Principality, whose territory extends from the Danube River in the north to the Aegean Sea in the south, from the Black Sea in the east to Lake Ohrid in the west, and includes almost all of Macedonia. It was nominally affiliated to the Ottoman Sultan and was occupied by the Russian army for 2 years. The establishment of this so-called Great Bulgarian Principality is actually a Russian pan-Slavic proposition, which clearly reveals the Russians' intention to control the Balkans through the puppet of Bulgaria. In fact, this so-called Greater Bulgaria, which only existed on paper, was never put into practice during the Berlin Conference in 1878, due to fears of Russian bears entering the Mediterranean Sea. The major powers directly put pressure on Russia, signed the Treaty of Berlin, and directly abolished the Great Bulgarian Plan. Not only was Great Bulgaria not established, in order to dispel the ambitions of the Russians, the meeting also dismembered Bulgaria directly, and Eastern Rumelia, the province with a majority of Bulgarians, was still placed under the Ottomans. In 1885, Eastern Rumelia launched an uprising and again announced its merger with Bulgaria. Although this Great Bulgarian Plan existed only on paper for a few months in the Treaty of San Stefano, it is clear that Bulgaria took it seriously. If Bulgaria had never owned Macedonia, it would be fine. It did. Faced with the current situation where the Ottoman Empire was deeply involved in the North African War, Bulgaria naturally had the ambition to regain Macedonia and realize the dream of Greater Bulgaria. The Bulgarian Prime Minister Jessup and the Greek Prime Minister Venizelos were at odds with each other over the issue of Macedonia's ownership. Serbian Prime Minister Pasic, who was watching from the sidelines, was naturally interested in competing for Macedonia. Although among the three countries, Serbia was the weakest in terms of various indicators, but in the hearts of Serbs, there is also a plan to build a Greater Serbia. Included in this plan is the region of Skopje in Macedonia, historically the capital of the ancient Serbian kingdom. Soon, Constantine, who was in Athens, got the news that the diplomatic team of Venizelos had negotiated with the two countries at Podgorica, and the two countries were not going well. The three countries had serious problems with regard to the ownership of Macedonia. Disagreement. www.uxiaspit.com has been slow to reach a consensus. On May 19, 1912, Constantine, together with King George, summoned the Chief of Military Intelligence, Chavalus, in the chamber. Mr. Chavalus, I called you this time to inform you that public opinion and propaganda about the war can already be started. Constantine did not hide his purpose. The intelligence service will notify those influential newspapers as soon as possible to start the warm-up of the war, Chavalus said in surprise. But the Prime Minister is still in diplomatic negotiations. Constantine responded in a cold tone. No matter what the outcome of the negotiations between the Prime Minister and the two countries is, the war between Greece and the Ottoman Empire is imminent. In the worst case, Greece and the two countries have no agreement at all, but Greece and the two countries will act on their own. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click the favorites below to record the reading record of this time. Chapter 207, War Warming Up, and you can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. If you like Greece and Roman Road, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, Widget, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 209, Negotiation Result. May 26, 1912, Tatoi Palace. The Constantine family is enjoying a rare relaxing time in the spacious and bright dining room. The Crown Prince's family of 7, in addition to Constantine and Sophie sitting at both ends of the table, the eldest son George, the second son Alexander, and the youngest Paul, the two princesses Helen and Irene surround a bar table, having breakfast. Is there going to be a war, father? George put down the knife and fork in his hand, took a sip of milk from the glass, and said to Constantine, who was reading the newspaper in the first place, Prince George, who was born in 1890, was already an adult. After completing the compulsory military education of the Greek royal family, He went to Germany to receive university education because the situation in Europe is tense now. I recently returned to Greece from Germany after the meal was over. Constantine, who was holding a newspaper in his hand, was watching intently without raising his head. How did you know that? In recent days, all the newspapers in Greece have published some negative news about the Ottoman Empire, obviously inciting public opinion. George couldn't hide his expression hearing this. Constantine glanced at the Athens Daily in his hand. The headline on the front page was to introduce readers to the blood tax system of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire has ruled Greece for hundreds of years, and naturally a lot of atrocities that can arouse the anger of the Greeks. The so-called blood tax means that the basic officials of the Ottoman Empire regularly collect boys from Christian families. According to a certain proportion, these boys were subjected to harsh military training from an early age and converted to the state religion of the Ottoman Empire. Some of these boys entered the army and became efficient, ferocious, and fearless fighters, like the famous Yenicheri Legion. In the history of the Ottoman Empire, some boys with high qualifications will receive a good education. When they reach adulthood, they can serve as officials at all levels, or serve in the Sultan's harem. Of course, they will be castrated. These are boys. The Ottoman Empire also had a system of concubinage, which was aimed at girls from Christian families. These girls will be brought into the Sultan's palace to become maids or concubines. Speaking of which, due to the special inheritance system of the Ottoman Empire, the mother of many Ottoman sultans was of Christian origin. This article in the newspaper introduced in detail the lesser-known concubinage system in the blood tax system. You can imagine how the Greeks would feel when they read the article of such a person. Of course, the public opinion of a country is all used to attack a certain country in Juan, and when it falls in the eyes of a person with a heart, it is natural to see some clues. Seeing that Constantine was still engrossed in reading the newspaper, George said expectantly, "I'm already 22 years old this year. Should I join the army?" When George's voice fell, Constantine put down the newspaper, looked at George, and saw that Prince George was specially wearing a military uniform today, and his whole person showed the unique heroism and ability of soldiers. Seeing that his father finally reacted, George patted his chest and said, "I have received complete military training, the Greek Army Command Course, the German Political Course and the Cavalry Command Officer training. Uncle William also personally awarded me a captain." "What about the military rank?" Constantine stood up, put on his coat under the servant service, and said to George at the same time, "I will inform Emmanuel and let him assign you a position in the army." Yesterday, the delegation led by Venizelos had returned to Athens from Bedrigacha. Constantine hurried to the prime minister's residence in a carriage, eager to learn the results of the negotiations with the two countries. Constantine went straight to the prime minister's office and saw that Venizelos was already processing official documents. Seeing Venizelos' exhausted face, there was no joy on his face. Instead, his face was so gloomy that water seemed to drip. Seeing this scene, Constantine already had some thoughts about the result of this diplomatic consultation. Yes, Prime Minister, what was the result of the meeting with the prime ministers of the two countries in Bedrigacha? What was the result? Constantine asked eagerly. Hearing this, Venizelos lifted his head from the pile of documents, saw that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince had come in person, stood up in silence, and led Constantine to the reception room to sit down. The attitude of the two countries is very firm. On the issue of dividing the Macedonian territory, the two countries have been unable to reach an agreement with us for a long time. Venizelos shook his head with a heavy heart. Hearing this, Constantine frowned and thought to himself, is Greece really going to fight alone? Serbia insists on acquiring North Macedonia, while Bulgaria has strong ambitions for the historic Greek city of Thessaloniki. Venizelos lamented, due to the huge differences between the two sides on the issue of territorial division, Greece and the alliance of the two countries have only reached some broad agreements, confirming that the two armies will cooperate with each other in the face of the Ottoman Empire. Constantine was confused by Venizelos for a while. From this point of view, is the alliance negotiation between Greece and Paula a success or a failure? Venizelos pondered for a moment and said, it's just a loose alliance. So, according to this, the territory of Macedonia, whichever country's army captures it during the war, belongs to which country? Constantine was surprised. Venizelos nodded and said, that's understandable. In addition, Serbian Prime Minister Pasic asked Greece to allow Serbia to build a railway to connect Serbia's interior with the seaport cities in northern Albania, Greece, and www.uksiaspit.com. During the negotiations, Grand Duke Nicholas of Montenegro also asked to join this alliance due to the continuous mountains and dangerous terrain. The Montenegro region has had difficult transportation. Historically, it has maintained a strong independence. The Ottoman Empire has never really conquered the Montenegro region. I remember that Montenegro seems to have always had a good relationship with Serbia, right? Constantine said thoughtfully. Montenegro and Serbia are brother countries, and the main population of Montenegro is also Slavs. Under the influence of the pan-Slavic trend, they naturally want to stand with their Serbian brothers. Venizelos analyzed at present, the territories of Montenegro and Serbia are not bordered. A prominent part of the Macedonian territory of the Ottoman Empire, like a knife, is inserted between the territories of Montenegro and Serbia to separate the two countries. Montenegro joins the alliance, and the Serbs naturally warmly welcome it. Once the two countries open up the border, according to the close relationship between Montenegro and Serbia, Montenegro, as a country along the Adriatic Sea, can completely become Serbia's sea outlet. Although Montenegro is an inconspicuous small country with a population of just over 100,000 people, the news that another Slavic country has joined the Slavic Union of the Balkans still touched the heartstrings of Constantine, and expressed his deep appreciation to Venice. Ross said, "Don't you think the Slavs on the Balkans are already too large, please? Remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 210, The Rise of the Balkans. Constantine also felt heavy pressure on the expanding Slavs' power in the Balkans after being frustrated in the Russo-Japanese War for nearly a decade. Russia, which has gradually recovered its strength, has refocused its attention on the Balkans and once again waved the banner of pan-Slavism. Obviously, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Montenegro, the three Balkan Slavic countries, were able to form an alliance this time. Obviously, with the support of the Russians, the Slavs are widely distributed throughout Eastern Europe and have a large number. The Russian Empire and the Kingdom of Poland. The Kingdom of Poland exists in name, but only the title of the King of Poland, held concurrently by the Russian Tsar, are all countries dominated by Slavs. A large number of Slavic populations also lived in large areas under the rule of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. For example, the Czech Republic, eastern Ukraine, near Lviv, belonging to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, as well as Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, annexed by the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1908. Taking advantage of the civil strife of the Ottoman Empire, are also the main areas occupied by the Slavs if you add the Slavic population of Montenegro, Serbia, and Bulgaria in the Balkans. The total Slavic population in Eastern Europe is nearly 200 million. At the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, it was a time when nationalism was surging, and a large number of nationalist fighters hoped that their nation would gain independence. It is conceivable that Austria-Hungary naturally hated the Russian Empire for advocating pan-Slavism. Precisely under the rule of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the status of the Slavs was not high. As a bizarre dualistic empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, as its name suggests, was dominated by the Germans, the main nation of the Kingdom of Austria, and the Magyars, the main nation of Hungary. It was out of fear of the integration of the Slavs that the Austro-Hungarian Empire reacted so violently to the union of Serbia and Bulgaria that it directly mobilized some of the troops on the Serbian border as the ruler of Greece. Constantine now heard that Montenegro had also joined the alliance, which also touched Constantine's sensitive nerves. Before, Russian bears have been hiding in corners and licking their wounds. Nearly 10 years have passed. Stolypin's reform policy has achieved remarkable results, and the Russian forces naturally intend to make a comeback, Venizelos said worriedly. Now, the situation in Europe is tense. Germany, which has been a hardcore ally of the United Kingdom in the past, has now replaced Russia as the primary target of the British. Instead, it is the traditional enemy of the United Kingdom. Russia has become a potential ally of the United Kingdom, naturally. The Russians will not miss this rare opportunity to exert influence in Eastern Europe. Constantine was unwilling that the two countries failed to make concessions to Greece. If it hadn't been for the British's attention being firmly attracted by the Germans, it would have been impossible for the British to watch the Balkans appear as an alliance of Slavic countries supported by the Russians under normal circumstances. As long as Russia shows signs of integrating the Slavs in Eastern Europe, it will definitely be like the Berlin Conference in 1878, and all countries will jointly beat the Russians. At present, Greece has only reluctantly reached an alliance agreement with the two countries to deal with the Ottoman Empire. With the concerted efforts of the three countries, dealing with the Ottoman Empire is no longer a problem. The crux of the question is, what should we do after dividing up the territory of the European part of the Ottoman Empire? Although the Ottoman Empire is still lingering, it has become weaker and weaker. Just like other countries, in the transition to a capitalist country, violent internal contradictions and conflicts have been exposed. Precisely, the national conditions of the Ottoman Empire were very complicated. It was not only a multi-ethnic country, but also a multi-religious country. Ethnic conflicts and religious conflicts are intertwined, making it difficult to carry out reforms in the Ottoman Empire. Judging from the current situation, even the ideals of the young Ottoman officers, the revolution and reform of the organization have not played a significant role in changing the declining national power of the Ottoman Empire. Under the suppression of the three kingdoms, the territory of the Ottoman Empire is bound to shrink to Asia Minor. So, who should fill the gap left by the Balkans? To put it more directly, among the three Balkan countries, who will replace the Ottoman Empire's previous hegemony in the Balkans? The reason why the two countries are so strong is that they firmly disagree that Greece, which has the strongest comprehensive strength among the three countries, occupies most of Macedonia, because they do not want to see Greece become the hegemon of the Balkans. The Slavic states of the Balkans were united, and Constantine also felt like he was stuck in his throat comparing the two countries with Greece alone. Constantine still has confidence, but when the two countries are united, Greece feels enormous pressure. Not only the hard power of the two countries, but also the power of the Slavs in Eastern Europe, standing faintly behind the two countries. The war against the Ottoman Empire has not yet begun, and Constantine has already smelled the smoke of the three countries competing for the dominance of the Balkans. For the future of the country and the destiny of the nation, Greece could not surrender this opportunity for development. Since 1881, Constantine has tried his best to overcome all kinds of difficulties, so that Greece can take the lead in industrialization and gain some opportunities, and there is no room for retreat. The road to industrialization is not an easy road. Once you embark on it, you are destined to experience the test of blood and fire. Resources are always limited, but there are many people who want to share the cake. Just like human society, the international community follows the law of 28. 20% occupies 80% of the wealth, and the remaining 80% divides 20% of the wealth. Holding the cigarette between his fingers, he took a hard sip. www.wuxiaspit.com. The fireworks were bright, and the smoke gushed out. Constantine said solemnly, the Balkans are about to usher in a round of reshuffle, and Greece needs to advance in advance. Be prepared. Your government departments should be prepared to prevent shocks. After thinking for a moment, Venizelos nodded. Since that's the case, I'll convene the heads of government departments to hold a state affairs meeting. Constantine raised his hand to look at the watch on his wrist, and said, it's not too late, the meeting should be held this afternoon. After speaking, he hurriedly turned around and left the Prime Minister's residence, and went to the Palace of the Constitution Square. When I came to the Palace of the Constitution Square to get to Constantine, I happened to meet King George in casual clothes in the garden, lying on a rattan chair for a nap. So he communicated to him about the convening of the State Council. King George heard his son's voice, looked at Constantine, and sighed. I won't participate in today's meeting. You can preside on your behalf. Constantine's face was full of surprise. You must know that the previous important meetings, regardless of their substance, were presided over by the king in name. Seemingly noticing Constantine's doubts, King George explained, my energy has declined greatly, although I don't want to admit it. I am indeed old, only. Then did Constantine notice that the old king, born in 1845, was 68 years old this year, nearly 70. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 211, Royal Influence. Mediterranean hairstyle, gray hair on the temples, dark yellow face wrinkles make up. The old king slowly got up from the rattan chair, with a look of reminiscence on his face. When I was 21 years old, I was elected King of Greece by Britain and France. It has been 30 or 40 years since I came from the wealthy Denmark in northwest Europe to the barren Greece in southeast Europe. King George seemed to be talking a lot. Tanton said, actually, it wasn't me who was most likely to win the Greek throne at that time. Among those royal families from famous families, there were many people with noble bloodlines and prestigious families who had priority over me. Said here, King George shook his head. Wry smile. Constantine could probably guess why no one wanted to go to Greece to be king. The previous king of Greece, who was born in the royal family of Bavaria, was ousted by the Greek people through an uprising and violent means. None of them were willing to give up the rich aristocratic life in Western Europe and go to Greece, which was chaotic and turbulent, even if it was the temptation of a crown. At that time, Greece was impoverished and troubled both at home and abroad. Constantine knew about this incident. Greece, which was independent from the Ottoman Empire, was weak and faced the threat of the Ottoman Empire. Therefore, in order to gain the support of more foreign powers, the new king of Greece, George, elected by Britain and France, married the Russian royal family and married the Russian Grand Duchess Olga. As King George made his statement, he put the grey coat over his body and held the felt hat in his hand. After being crowned king of Greece, in order to prevent the royal family from becoming the center of contradictions and getting involved in political struggles, the royal family should not be at the forefront of political struggles. Therefore, I have always maintained the rights of the Prime Minister of Greece and respected the rights of the Parliament. Don't try to be the real monarch with his sole power. That will put the royal family in danger. King George warned solemnly. Constantine stood respectfully by the side, humbly listening to King George's experience in governing the country and politics. Many people have imagined that if they become kings or emperors, they will be powerful and unparalleled. However, judging from the ill-fated fate of the emperors of the Eastern Roman Empire, it was not an enviable position in history. Not many emperors of the Eastern Roman Empire were fortunate enough to die. There were not a few Eastern Roman emperors who suffered a coup d'état, were killed, imprisoned, assassinated, and were defeated and killed. Of course, if you have a great talent like Augustus or Constantine, that's another matter. Although many people will ridicule a rubber stamp when referring to the British royal family, on the other hand, it seems that there is nothing wrong with people who don't have to work hard, are busy running around all day, and manage all kinds of opportunities. The work of governing the country is handed over to the Prime Minister, and the monarch is only the nominal head of state. Now, Europe is in a state of rapid change. If you are not careful, another crown falls. You know, more and more European people are questioning the kingship. It seems that those countries without kings can also exist normally. I don't know how many people are happy to find that a country can be effectively managed without a king. Constantine knew that the old king meant the United States and France, two republics without monarchs, although, according to the Constitution, Greece no longer has a real monarch, but this does not mean that the royal family does not need any political rights. If the royal family wants to continue, it still needs to have enough social influence. King George said, Constantine, I would like to hear your thoughts on how to manage the social influence of the royal family. Constantine was stunned when he heard this, knowing that King George was testing himself. After pondering for a moment, various ideas emerged one by one in his mind about building the influence of the royal family. There are mainly three aspects. The first is the army. Continue to strengthen and stabilize the leadership of the royal family in the army, which is the foundation of the royal family's influence. Secondly, in terms of finance, since the role of capital in the political life of various countries is getting bigger and bigger, and the royal power is getting weaker and weaker, it is an irreversible trend. Then, the royal family will be turned into capital and follow this trend. At present, in the financial field, the ZPO Foundation and the Royal Bank of Greece, which are controlled by the royal family, are developing well. Through the loans or investments of these two financial institutions, the influence of the royal family in the economy is amplified. After all, the financial industry is all industries. Upstream, as long as there is a place for the royal family in the financial industry, the influence of the royal family in society cannot be underestimated. To put it bluntly, as long as the royal family controls a huge amount of capital, they are not afraid of having no social influence. King George looked at the chattering crown prince and nodded in appreciation. Obviously, King George was in favor of the idea of Constantine maintaining the social influence of the royal family through financial institutions. Anything else? Then there is education, Constantine replied. Currently, the Royal Greek Education Foundation managed by Sophie plays a pivotal role in the Greek education system. The current compulsory education in Greece is almost entirely completed with the support of the foundation. Even in secondary and higher education, the role of the Royal Education Foundation is clearly visible. In recent years, the Education Foundation has invested a lot of scholarships in major colleges and universities to reward those students with outstanding academics. When these students enter the society and become elite talents from all walks of life, also invisibly demonstrate a good image of the royal family, King George praised. It is indeed a good way. In any case, those students who enjoy the foundation's sponsorship will view the royal family with a more positive attitude. Afterwards, He frowned and said, however, there is also a hidden danger. The amount of funds spent on education is huge. How can the Foundation's source of funds be guaranteed? Tens of thousands of students, if they all rely on the royal family for their money, it is not realistic at all. At present, the main source of funds for the Foundation still relies on the Congolese taxation. According to the agreement reached between the royal family and the Congolese government, the Congo needs to hand over more than 60 million drachmas to the Royal Education Foundation each year. All the investment income of the foundation itself will be used for the operation of the foundation itself. According to my concept www.wuxiaspit.com, the Education Foundation will need to rely on investment benefits to maintain its operation in the future. The proportion of funds allocated by the Congolese government in the funds of the foundation will continue to decrease. The focus of the Education Foundation's investment will be the resource industry. Whether it is rational or from the perspective of practical needs, the resource industry is the main focus of the foundation. After all, the beneficiaries of Greece's domestic resources should be the Greek people, which is reasonable. King George asked with interest, what resources are currently invested by the Education Foundation? At present, it is mainly oil and coal, and bauxite industries. The Education Foundation, together with the Zipeo Foundation, previously invested in the development of oil fields in the city of Ferry. Recently, it seems to have invested in several lignite mines for power generation. The Educational Foundation is a sovereign fund managed by the royal family, and the beneficiaries will be all Greek citizens. King George paced back and forth, considering Constantine's approach. It's a good idea. Just do it according to your idea, Constantine. As I said before, if there is a state conference in the afternoon, I will leave it to you to preside over it. When the voice fell, King George picked up the civilization stick leaning on the vine and walked out of the courtyard. Apparently, the retiree wanted to relax on the street again. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 212, State Council. In the afternoon, luxury carriages drove into the gates of the royal palace in Syntagma Square. After receiving a notification from Prime Minister Venizelos, high-level military and political leaders of Greece came one after another at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Constantine received a notification from his servants that the Greek ministers and senior military officials who came to attend the meeting had arrived one after another. After coming to the conference room, Constantine sat on the main seat under the surprised eyes of everyone, at one end of the long conference table, directly opposite Prime Minister Venizelos. In previous meetings, the Crown Prince Constantine usually sat next to the king. His Majesty the King has ordered me to preside over this state conference with full authority. Everyone should know that Prime Minister Venizelos has reached an agreement with the Slavic League of Nations to deal with the Ottoman Empire in Bodega Ligacha. Constantine went straight to the topic, facing the crowd said loudly, the main reason for calling everyone here this time is to find out the situation in Greece in all aspects, so as to deal with the upcoming Balkan War. Venizelos said, oh, by the way, let me introduce to you. This is the director of the Greek Grain Reserve Bureau. Prime Minister Rufus Venizelos introduced a middle-aged official in his 40s beside him. Well, Director Rufus, how much grain does your Grain Reserve Bureau have now? Constantine immediately asked when he heard that the director of the Grain Reserve Bureau had also attended the meeting. Rufus quickly took out the documents from the briefcase, glanced at it and said, so far, the Grain Reserve Bureau has stored up to 480,000 tons of grain. These include 90,000 tons of rice from the Congo, 120,000 tons of wheat imported from Russia, 60,000 tons of wheat from the United States, and 210,000 tons of wheat purchased by placing orders with various agricultural cooperatives in Greece. Busy talking to the crowd, then, Director Laufus, how long can these grains last under extreme conditions? Constantine asked, what do you mean by extreme conditions? Rufus asked uncertainly, in the worst case, Greece's channels for importing food from foreign countries are completely cut off, and due to the unrest in Greece, food cannot be obtained at all. Constantine said it's not that Greece will really encounter such a tragic situation, but Constantine wants to know how long Greece can endure with these reserves of food under the worst conditions. After thinking for a moment, Rufus responded, in this case, 480,000 tons of grain is enough to support Greece for 2 to 3 months. Venizelos nodded and continued, according to the statistics of various departments of the Greek government, as of now, that is, in May 1912, the population of Greece has reached 4.4 million, which is 4.4 million compared to the previous year's number. The number has increased by 6%, and this growth rate will continue in the long run. The population of Greece, Constantine, has always been a headache. Although stimulated by Greece's fertility policy, the growth rate has maintained a relatively high figure. However, because of Greece's small population base, even if the growth rate appears to be high, the absolute number of population added is small. Population growth is like making money. The accumulation of funds in the early stage is the most difficult, and 0 to 1 million is the most difficult to earn. When the second million is reached, it will be much simpler. The same is true of population growth. When the base of the population reaches a certain level, even if the growth rate is low, the actual number of population increases will be considerable. The reason why the growth rate is so high is that in addition to the natural reproduction of the domestic population, the Greeks from the entire Balkan Peninsula have migrated to Greece in the past 2 years, Venizelos explained. Last year alone, according to the data left by customs, 80,000 people from the Balkans came to Greece. Constantine frowned and asked, "What's the reason? Are they all immigration?" Part of it is immigration, and part is coming to Greece to work. There are many job opportunities in Greece, and the salary is good. In recent years, many people from Macedonia have come to work in Greece, Venizelos reported. In recent years, the Macedonian region has been in chaos. The underground armed forces supported by Bulgaria, Serbia and Greece have been engaged in a long-term tug-of-war for control of Macedonia. These guerrillas intimidated and threatened those villages and towns that were unwilling to belong to them, including violence. This led to the Macedonian region, where robbers and bandits could be seen everywhere. The chaotic situation naturally affected the people living in Macedonia. With the aid of partisans affiliated with Greece, industrial products produced by Greece can be seen everywhere in Macedonia. Greece's rapid economic development and more job opportunities have naturally attracted many Macedonians to come to work. As for fiscal revenue, the government's fiscal revenue is expected to reach 1.16 billion drachmas this year. Venizelos told the crowd about the government's fiscal problems. Among them, 250 million drachmas have been allocated to the Navy for the construction of the Navy. In the past 3 years, the funds have been allocated in batches. The national debt of 30 million drachma has also been fully repaid. In general, Greece's financial situation is relatively healthy, Venizelos commented briskly. As soon as the voice fell, the expressions of everyone in the meeting were relieved by 2 points due to the haze of the war. The originally tense atmosphere in the conference room also disappeared. After all, no matter how troublesome the war is, as long as the Greek government maintains sufficient financial resources, they will be able to relax a lot. Greece's steel production last year was 420,000 tons, and it is estimated that this figure will remain at this level this year, said Industry Minister Mioeris. In disinterest no way, limited by the problem of raw materials, Greece's heavy industry has been growing slowly until the limitation of raw material sources is resolved. Greece's heavy industry will not develop too fast. It can only be said that for countries that are short of raw materials, the development of heavy industry is really powerless. Last year, the industrial output value of Greece reached 800 million drachmas, of which the textile industry created an output value of 450 million drachmas, of which 380 million drachmas were exported to the Ottoman Empire. Said the textile industry has always played an important role in the Greek economy, the main export market. Reading www.ukanchu.com is the Ottoman Empire. It's just these years, after the opening of the railway from Berlin to Constantinople in Germany, with the roar of the train, a large number of German and Austro-Hungarian industrial products flooded into the Ottoman Empire. In the commodity market of the Ottoman Empire, the commodities of Germany and Austria-Hungary increased year by year, constantly nibbling away the commodities of other countries. Originally, the largest cotton cloth sales market in Greece was the Ottoman Empire. In recent years, the sales of Greek cotton cloth have been declining year by year. A certain amount of sales can be maintained because most of the owners of the local tailors and garment workshops are Greeks, or Armenians, Jews, who have good relations with Greece and are willing to buy Greek textiles. But last year, Greece exported 380 million drachmas of textiles to Austria, which is obviously not normal, not too low, but too high. Seeing that everyone's eyes were focused on him, Mioeris explained, "My view is that the reason for this is because the Ottomans need a lot of textiles due to preparations for war. After all, the Ottoman Empire is now at war with Italy, and the possibility of war in the Balkans is getting bigger and bigger. It is very likely that the Ottomans have already begun to mobilize, wearing Hundreds of thousands of troops naturally requires a lot of textiles. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 213, Worry. Recently, not only the Ottoman Empire, but also Serbia and Bulgaria have suddenly placed a large number of textile orders, including a large number of gauze, Austria, yes, and the medicines of Philip Pharmaceuticals, which also received a lot of order. Mio Aris said. Everyone looked at each other. Obviously, all the Balkan countries were preparing for the war. Although everyone had expected this for a long time, the orders from various countries only verified this idea. In the case of the energy sector, oil production near the city of Feri reached 420,000 tons, an increase of 11% compared to last year, of which 130,000 tons were exported to Italy. According to the staff of the Greek oil company, the increase in oil production there has been at a limit. Although oil production may continue to grow in the future, the growth rate will not be too large. Lignite production in Greece reached a record 5.25 million tons last year, mainly for thermal power generation, said Mio Aris, who couldn't hide the excitement on his face. The AC system is now fully mature and has entered a period of rapid development, requiring massive amounts of lignite as a raw material for power generation every year due to the unprecedented strong market demand. Lignite mines are sought after by the Greeks, and Greece's lignite production has exploded according to the managers of Tesla Power Company. The current demand for electricity in Greece is strong. Lignite. There is also bauxite. Last year, the output of bauxite in Greece reached 120,000 tons. As the Minister of Industry, Mio Aris is still very satisfied with the development of the energy industry. The speed of industrial development is not bad from the data, especially the achievements made by the development of light industry, such as textiles, food processing industry, medical and health industry and other light industries, which have achieved rapid development in recent years, but it is not without worries. In terms of heavy industry, 3 years ago, Greece's steel production reached 390,000 tons, and it has increased by 30,000 tons in 3 years to 420,000 tons. This increase can be ignored. Mio Aris commented on Greece's industrial development in recent years after everyone had almost digested Mio Aris' report. Constantine asked, well, what about education? In terms of higher education, several comprehensive universities have been completed. The University of Athens, the Naval Technical School, and the University of Tirana have received key financial support from the government. At present, the number of college students in the school has reached 45,000, Minister of Education Ali Ali S replied. Basic compulsory education, with the help of the Greek Education Foundation, has covered all school-aged children in Greece at present. The number of Greeks who have received compulsory education has reached 1.2 million. The rapid progress of Greek education has injected a powerful force into the Greek economy because these schools have provided the factories in Greece with highly skilled engineers, highly skilled workers and wise managers. Constantine asked pointedly, is the promotion of Greek language education in Albania going well? There are hundreds of thousands of Albanians living in Albania. Although the Greek government has done a lot of work in recent years, after all, the cultural differences between the two sides are too great, and Constantine was still a little worried after pondering for a moment. Aris said, the locals raised money to establish several Albanian language schools, but there are not many people enrolled in factories run by Greeks. When recruiting employees, they make it clear that they have clear requirements for employees' Greek proficiency. Also, local government departments and agencies, their working language is also Greek. Your Highness, Albanian is not a good climate. In recent years, the Greek government has intentionally sponsored a large number of agricultural cooperatives in Albania to go to Albania to open up wasteland. Prime Minister, how is the population distribution in Albania now? Constantine turned to Prime Minister Venizelos. The geographical location of Albania is critical, and it is adjacent to Montenegro. Due to its coastal location, it is coveted by Serbia, and there are a large number of Albanians living there. Constantine is naturally worried about the situation there. Previously, some policies of the Greek government caused huge disturbances in the Albania region. The Greek government enforces the monogamy system locally, which is completely different from the polygamy system that has been implemented locally for many years, established in a local court, which has ruled many cases where concubinage is illegal. This fundamental cultural difference cannot be without storms. This move also has the purpose of reducing the fertility rate of the Afghan population. After all, MSLs have a strong willingness to have children. Coupled with the polygamy system, The fertility rate is even higher. In addition, after Greece acquired Albania, the local economic situation has improved greatly. Unlike the Ottoman Empire, which is not like the Ottoman Empire, this could add fuel to the already high Albanian fertility rate. Currently, the number of Albanians in Greece is about 350,000. As for the number of Greeks there, it is about 210,000. Venizelos replied. Constantine nodded and instructed, "Don't relax, continue to encourage the Greeks to move to the local area." After finishing speaking, he continued to say to Eris, "Don't let your education department relax in your local work." Afterwards, Gustidine's eyes fell on Emmanuel, the chief of the general staff, who was very worried. "Is there any problem with your general staff?" His Royal Highness www.uxiaspit.com Prime Minister Emmanuel said, "According to our current occupation goals, the alliance is at war with the Ottoman Empire, and we will occupy Macedonia, including Skopje and Thessaloniki, which is bound to conflict with the Serbian and Bulgarian troops." Emmanuel said, "I'm not very worried about the war with the Ottoman Empire, but as far as I know, Skopje and Thessaloniki are the strategic goals of Serbia and Bulgaria respectively. With the strength of Greece, if the two countries join forces to attack Greece, I'm afraid Greece is fighting with the armies of both countries at the same time." Constantine asked rhetorically, "Yes, the general staff does not have a corresponding plan. I am worried that the army will not be in a hurry at that time, and, with all due respect, Your Highness, the Greek army is facing the attack of the two countries at the same time, and the victory rate is not high." Emmanuel. He frankly expressed his concerns. Constantine looked at the opposite Prime Minister Venizelos and wanted him to answer this question. If Greece really occupies a large area of Macedonian territory in the future war, it is very likely that the two countries will attack Greece at the same time, Venizelos said solemnly. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 214, The Outbreak of War. However, although the two countries have formed an alliance with the support of Russia, the two countries themselves have a lot of quarrels, Venizelos said solemnly. If the two countries really join forces to attack Greece, it will inevitably affect the situation in Europe. At present, the situation in Europe is very tense. The alliance formed by Britain, France, Russia and Germany, Austria and Italy are hostile to each other, and the major powers will naturally intervene between Greece and Paula. Disputes. Venizelos, the foreign minister, told the crowd about the situation Greece may face. Austro-Hungarian Empire is already very dissatisfied with the ambitious Serbia. If Serbia joins Bulgaria to attack, and if it is successful, what will happen? Venizelos did not wait for everyone to respond, and asked himself, once Greece fails, Serbia will inevitably ask for Albania, or the seaport of Albania, in order to lift Serbia's status as a landlocked country, and this is precisely what the Austro-Hungarian Empire absolutely cannot bear. Since the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina by Austria-Hungary in 1908, Serbia and Austria-Hungary broke apart completely. Serbia has actively engaged with Russia and has become an important ally of Russia in the Balkans. The relationship between Serbia and Austria-Hungary is tense, and the two countries are currently engaged in a trade confrontation. Serbia even banned the export of bacon to Austria-Hungary, resulting in a rapid rise in the price of bacon in Austria-Hungary. Of course, according to the principle of expecting the enemy to be lenient, your general staff should still make a response plan, Constantine said to Chief of the General Staff Emmanuel. So, Your Highness, do you need to recruit Congolese troops to go to Europe? Emmanuel asked. In the last war, the black troops gathered by Greece from the Congo played an important role on the battlefield and left a deep impression on the general staff. Although the fighting power of the black natives was slightly inferior to that of the native Greek soldiers, however, the Congo region has sufficient human resources, which is indeed unmatched by the Greek mainland. The population of the Congo region under Greek rule is about 20 to 30 million, while the Greek mainland has only 5 million people. The Congo has been under Greek rule for 30 years. And the Congolese government's local management has been very mature compared to the War of 1897. The Greek army was able to mobilize more indigenous people into the army. Now that the war between Greece and the Ottoman Empire is imminent, the general staff naturally wants to get more indigenous soldiers from the Congo. Thinking of Emma Inner's suggestion to summon more Congolese soldiers to go to Greece, Constantine shook his head, but still refused. First of all, Greece's military strength is sufficient to meet the needs of this war. The mobilizable forces of Greece, Bulgaria, and Serbia have combined to nearly 800,000 soldiers, enough to deal with the military threat of the Ottoman Empire. Secondly, Constantine hoped that the Greek armed forces would have independent combat capabilities, instead of relying too much on indigenous soldiers. Time entered October 1912. The clouds of war in the Balkans were clearly visible. The armies on both sides were already tense, and the tense atmosphere lingered although Italy and the Ottoman Empire were still in a state of war. The stalemate continued as neither side could force the other to submit. During the war on October 10, Montenegro, part of the Balkan Alliance, under the behest of the three countries, sent troops directly to attack the territory that was still nominally belonging to the Ottoman Empire. Montenegro tried to capture the area between Montenegro and Serbia, thus bordering the territory of Montenegro and Serbia. Under the pressure of the severe situation, the Ottoman Empire accelerated negotiations with Italy in order to free up its hands to deal with the aggressive Balkan countries. Italian diplomats decided to take advantage of the situation to get a good peace deal. On October 18, 1912, Italy and Turkey signed a treaty at Auchi, near Lausanne. There are the following: 1. Turkey must withdraw all military personnel from Benghazi province, but in return, Italy will return Rhodes and 12 islands close to Turkey. 2. The province of Benghazi will have a special status, with a regent and judges representing the Caliph. 3. Before appointing these regents and judges, the Turks will question the Italian government. 4. The Turkish government will be responsible for the costs of the regent and judges. The treaty effectively agreed to cede Libya to Italy. On October 18, Greece issued an ultimatum to the Ottoman Empire, demanding that the Ottoman army withdraw from the Balkans. The war officially broke out. At 2 p.m. on the 18th, Crown Prince Constantine, Greek Prime Minister Venizelos, Chief of General Staff Emma Inner, and Navy Commander General Kantaridis came together to the Palace of the Constitution Square and presented them to King George. Tiao-Chan of the General Mobilization. King George glanced at the documents on the table, looked at the four people standing at the table, didn't say a word, just signed his name silently. On the evening of the 18th, the port of Piraeus. The night fell, but it was difficult to silence the hustle and bustle of the port. The Greek Navy, which has been waiting for a long time, has all the main battleships, including 2 Invincible-class strategic cruisers and 8 destroyers, warming up in the port, waiting for the command of the fleet. Commander Constantine sent Kantaridis and other high-ranking naval officers to the port. The glory of the Greek Navy is in this battle. I hope to see you return in triumph as soon as possible, Constantine said enthusiastically. Kantaridis, who is wearing the uniform of Vice Admiral www.uxiaspit.com, seemed calm and confident in defeating the Ottoman Navy. Your Highness, within a few days, you can hear the news of our victory. As a witness of the Greek Navy, Kantaridis, through his hands, developed from nothing, and naturally has full confidence in the strength of the Greek Navy. This fast reaction fleet used to deal with the Ottoman Navy. All warships are cutting-edge warships in service within 5 years. 2 Invincible-class battle cruisers King George and Terry Cupis, as well as the 1,500-ton super-large destroyer built by Greece with British technical assistance, can be used for the entire fleet in wartime conditions. 20 knots sailing speed in order to effectively cooperate with the Navy warships, so that the speed difference between the warships is not too large and other warships are dragged down. Kantaridis did not even agree to let the 2 Esmeralda-class armored cruisers in the Greek Navy join the fleet, but were for maritime patrol. After speaking, he gave a military salute to everyone who was boarding the Navy flagship Terry Cupis. Constantine is also about to go to the Macedonian front line, to the front-line military camp. Compared with the actions of the Greek army, the Greek Navy achieved dazzling results in the early days of the war. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 215, Maritime Operations. The fleet commander, Vice Admiral Kantaridis, in the command tower of the Terry Cupis, the flagship of the Rapid Response Fleet, ordered the fleet to set sail. The searchlights on the flagship pierced through the thick fog, constantly conveying the fleet commander's orders to the surrounding warships. When the distance is relatively short, the warships communicate with each other through light signals, which is much faster than wireless communication. The warships in the port, black smoke billows from the chimneys, rising into the sky, the loud whistle sound, startling the seagulls, scattered almost all the essence of the Greek Navy. The fleet formed, officially set sail. The ships following the fleet, in addition to the 2 supply ships, were 2 10,000-ton freighters leased by the Greek Navy from the private sector. On board are 3,000 soldiers of the Marine Corps, as well as their full set of equipment. The task of the Greek Navy is severe. As the only naval force in the Balkan Alliance, The Greek Navy must play an important role. The Greek Navy faces important tasks. 1. Capture the islands of the Aegean Sea, especially those in the eastern part of the Aegean Sea. 2. Blockade the Dardanelles, cut off the Ottoman Empire by sea, and support the possibility of the Macedonian battlefield. 3. Blockade of the Aegean Sea and the Ottoman coastal routes in the eastern Mediterranean from the Suez Canal, Palestine, Syria, all the way north, to Asia Minor, to the Dardanelles. These coastal areas of the Ottoman Empire are all within the scope of the Greek Navy's operations. There are many islands in the Aegean Sea, and on these islands, Greeks have lived for generations. The blockade of the Ottoman Empire's offshore routes was an economic blow to the enemy among them. The most important role is to block the Dardanelles and cut off the Ottoman Empire from supporting the Balkan battlefield by sea and land. This is crucial to the outcome of the war. If the Ottoman Empire uses its huge military force in Asia to mobilize its potential military sources in Asia, it is indeed possible to change the balance of forces between the two sides. And the situation will not be optimistic. The 3 Balkan countries have a total population of about 10 million and a total territorial area of no more than 500,000. After all, the Ottoman Empire was a skinny camel bigger than a horse, with a total population of about 20 million and a nominal territory of 5 million square kilometers. Just looking at the data on paper, the Balkan Alliance has no advantage. In the War of 1897, Greece was able to win, and there were many tricky factors at that time. The Ottoman Empire was in a special period. Its large number of old armies are no longer sufficient, and their backward equipment and tactics are out of tune with modern warfare. A new army is being transformed and trained with the help of German officers. When the war broke out in 1897, the new army of the Ottoman Empire was not completed, the old army was corrupted and degenerate, and the military power of the whole country was in a special period of green and yellow. Greece can be considered to have taken advantage of a loophole, and there are many fluke factors. The Ottoman army in 1912 was completely different. German officers helped Sudan train hundreds of thousands of new troops whose weapons were entirely sourced from Germany. The rifle is Mauser 98, and the artillery is Krupp. In the previous Libyan war, the Ottoman army fought against the European powers Italy, and was baptized by the war politically. The Turkish Al-Shabaab launched a coup d'état. The Turkish Al-Shabaab, which has close ties with the Ottoman army, naturally supported the new Ottoman army, an armed force under its control. After it entered the political arena in the early days of the war, Greece had a small plan to cut off the passage of the Ottoman Empire from the sea to support the Balkan battlefield through the Greek Navy. If the Aegean Sea can be blocked, the Ottoman Empire's troops deployed in Asia, even if they are dispatched to support, can only resist the Bulgarians in the trenches near Istanbul. Due to the poor passage, the Greek army in Macedonia is basically unlikely to encounter these reinforcements after Bulgaria acquired eastern Rumelia. The Bulgarian border was only nearly 100 kilometers away from Constantinople, posing a serious threat to the Ottoman Empire. Greece is naturally willing to see Bulgaria, the most powerful army in the Balkan Alliance, take more responsibility. The quick response fleet led by Constantinople had the most important responsibility, which was to block the Dardanelles. This means that the quick reaction fleet is likely to have a naval battle with the main force of the Ottoman Navy. After all, the Ottoman Empire, no matter what, could not endure the shame of being blocked by the Greek Navy at the gates of the Dardanelles. In the War of 1897, the Ottoman Navy was unable to stop the actions of the Greek Navy, which led to a surprise attack on Thessaloniki by the Greek Navy's auxiliary army, which directly caused the Ottoman Empire to lose the war. In the recent Italian-Turkish War, the Ottoman Navy feared the strength of the Italian Navy again. After all, there is a huge gap in strength between the two sides. The Ottoman Navy is wise to protect itself. During the whole Italian-Turkish War, they huddled in the Dardanelles Strait and did not dare to go out to fight, so much so that the Ottomans had to find a way to support the Libyan battlefield from a long overland route, to go around a big circle and send support troops to Libya through Egypt. And it also depends on the face of the British. Egypt was controlled by the British century now. Once again, the Ottoman Navy faces a difficult choice, whether to engage the dominant Greek Navy. The quick reaction fleet, under the command of Constantinople, after passing through the Kafire Strait, headed north all the way to Limas Island. Limas Island, located in the north-central Aegean Sea, guards the Dardanelles. Only a few dozen nautical miles away from the Dardanelles. Once the Greek Navy occupies the island, it will be like a nail, providing the Greek Navy with a forward base close to the Dardanelles. www.uxiaspit.com to monitor the movements of the Ottoman Navy in the Dardanelles. The Dardanelles is the main base of the Ottoman Navy. At 7 in the morning on October 19, the entire fleet reached 30 nautical miles south of Limas Island. The 3 destroyers in the fleet, under the command of the fleet commander, carried out reconnaissance and vigilance work around the island of Limas to explore whether there was any Ottoman naval activity in the nearby waters. In the command room, Cantoridis was discussing with the officers how to take down Limas Island. Colonel Feelard, you also know the importance of the strategic location of Limas Island. Are you sure you can take it here? Cantoridis asked Colonel Feelard, commander of the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps, so far, is the only force in the Greek Navy capable of land combat. The original intention of its establishment was to facilitate the capture of islands in the Aegean Sea by the Greek Navy. If the fleet can secure the blockade of Limas Island, the Marine Corps is of course confident in capturing the island in a few days, Colonel Feelard said without hesitation. According to the information collected by the intelligence department before the war, due to the important strategic location of the island, there have been 300 or 400 Ottoman troops stationed here. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 216, Problem. After the reconnaissance of the destroyer fleet and repeated confirmation that there was no Ottoman warship activity in the nearby waters, the Marines quietly landed on the side of Mudras Bay on Limas Island with the help of inflatable boats under the cover of night. Mudras Bay is a natural harbor with wide, deep water and calm waves, suitable for docking large ships. After capturing Mudras Bay, the warships of the Quick Response Fleet can directly moor in Mudras Bay and use Limas Island as the forward base of the Greek blockade fleet. This will not only allow the crew to go ashore and rest properly, but also facilitate the delivery of fleet supplies to warships, and use Limas Bay as a gathering point for logistical materials. The captain's staff officer Hydrus reported to Commander Feelard, who, in a low voice, "Sir, after a busy first half of the night, 1,500 soldiers of the Marine Corps have successfully landed. According to our daytime reconnaissance, the flat terrain near this bay is narrow and the surrounding landforms are complex. It is not suitable for all Marines to form a formation. In addition to the lack of vegetation cover near the bay, the surrounding forests are lush, surrounded by hills, and the view of the troops is greatly restricted." The whole beach was so silent that Commander Hydrus was a little flustered. Hydrus, who was observing the situation near the harbor with a telescope, said solemnly, "Has the reconnaissance team been dispatched? It is impossible for the Ottoman troops stationed on the island to fail to discover the Greek fleet. After all, when the Greek fleet arrived during the day yesterday, it did not cover up its tracks at all. Yesterday, the weather was fine, the waves were soothing, and the visibility on the sea was extremely high. The Ottoman troops, as the island guards of Limas Island, must have noticed the whereabouts of the Greek fleet. Limas Bay, where the Marines landed, is also a temporary port for the island guard troops to receive supplies on weekdays. The island guard troops should be very familiar with the nearby terrain during the whole process of landing the 1,500-man army. The Ottoman army did not shoot a single shot. It seemed to turn a blind eye to the actions of the landing troops, which was too strange. This abnormal behavior made Commander Fedra feel a little uneasy. She raised her hand and looked at the luminous watch on her left wrist. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly, in the sparse woods around the harbor, there was a sudden sound of gunshots. The soldiers on guard duty around Hydrus subconsciously crawled on the ground. In the dark night, their alert eyes kept patrolling the surroundings. "It looks like the reconnaissance squad has encountered an enemy," Hydrus said in a low voice. He dispatched a total of 50 reconnaissance soldiers, divided into 5 squads, to show a fan-shaped search around the harbor, hoping that they would find out the terrain and the distribution of the enemy. For the Marine Corps, the remaining 1,500 soldiers were exhausted after tossing around in the middle of the night. At this time, they were all taking time to rest. After all, tomorrow's military operation, clearing the surrounding area of the harbor, still needs them to complete. "Do I need to send the soldiers to support? I'm worried that the scouts will suffer too many casualties," Hydrus pleaded with an ugly face. After pondering for a moment, Colonel Feelard shook his head and rejected the suggestion of the staff officer. "The enemy obviously anticipated our actions and has already completed targeted deployments. Increase the difficulty and rashly support the reconnaissance unit, the unit may fall into chaos. They can only rely on themselves," Colonel Feelard said unwillingly. "Scouts are all elites selected from soldiers. They have high combat literacy. They are the eyes of the troops and provide intelligence support for the commander's decision-making." Despite the enemy's early preparations, Hydra still believed that the scouts could successfully break away from contact with the enemy and complete the reconnaissance mission. While the two of them were talking, a series of da-da-da sounds suddenly sounded in the woods around the bay. This is the unique sound of the Maxim machine gun. Fedra and Hydrus looked at each other. Their faces were a bit ugly on such a narrow terrain. The enemy's Harvest Island troops and the defense of heavy weapons like Mark I undoubtedly put the Marine Corps in a very disadvantageous position. I am afraid that they will be suppressed by the enemy on the beachhead, and they will be unable to move thinking like this, but couldn't do anything. Both of them became anxious. Sporadic gunshots, mixed with continuous machine gun shots, broke the tranquility of the bay. It wasn't until half an hour later that several panting reconnaissance squad leaders came to Farad to report on the investigation. With a dignified expression on Federer's face, he ordered in a deep voice, "All teams report casualties. 3 people in the first team were injured and 2 died. The second team killed 3 people and injured 3 people. No one was injured in the third team. 5 people in the fourth team were injured. No one died. Fourth team 4 killed, 3 injured." With a dignified expression on his face, Federer said to the reconnaissance squad leaders, "What about the reconnaissance situation? Is the distribution of the enemy's heavy firepower clear?" The Ottomans seemed to have anticipated our actions. They were ambushed in the woods and covered by weeds, and we were suddenly attacked, with heavy casualties, and it was too late to observe and record the distribution of enemy firepower. The enemy has deployed machine gun positions in the woods after several people reported on the investigation. Federer and Hedris looked worried. Originally thought that the Ottoman army just deployed a few hundred troops on the island, and with the strength of the Marines, it could be easily taken. However, he didn't expect to encounter a difficult situation at the beginning. The enemy took advantage of the geographical advantage, and with the help of the fierce firepower of the Maxim machine gun, the Marine Corps would be very passive in such an unobstructed exposed area as the beachhead. Due to the special combat environment of the Marine Corps, those heavy weapons that are cumbersome and inconvenient to move, such as artillery and machine guns, are not equipped with the Marine Corps at all. Among all the weapons of the Marine Corps, the only one that can be called a heavy weapon www.uxiaspit.com is the mortar, but the range of mortars is very short, usually only a few hundred meters. The target is the enemy's fortifications, and the power of mortar shells is also unsatisfactory. The enemy's position was hidden in the thick woods again, and the mortar's field of vision was limited, making it impossible to effectively strike the enemy's machine gun positions if the enemy's firepower cannot be suppressed, and the Marine Corps lacking heavy weapons can barely attack the enemy's hidden positions. Relying on their own numerical superiority, it is not impossible to attack. Just do that, and the Marine Corps casualty numbers will be very high. As the only land combat force of the Navy, the Marine Corps will rely on the Marine Corps to complete a series of island capture operations. If the Marine Corps suffered heavy losses at the beginning, then a series of operations planned by the Navy would be seriously dragged down. Due to his confidence in the strength of the Greek Navy, Cantaratus believed that the 2 German ex-dreadnoughts of the Ottoman Empire Navy, which relied on the 2 Greek Invincible-class war cruisers as the main force of the Greek fleet, were not equal opponents at all. Therefore, the first target of the fleet under the command of Cantaratus aimed at the strategically important island of Limas. After Limas Island, there are still a lot of islands in the Aegean Sea that need to be solved by the Marines. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217, Shelling. In order to reduce casualties, after weighing the right and left, Colonel Farad had no choice but to agree with the advice of Admiral Hadris and ask the fleet for help in the command module of the Trachupis. Cantaratus met with Admiral Hadris, who returned to the flagship in a rubber dinghy overnight after learning that the Marine Corps encountered the enemy occupying favorable terrain during the landing, and waiting for work, and needed the fire support of the fleet. He fell into contemplation. Hadris looked at the silent naval commander with trepidation, and felt uneasy in his heart. The Greek warships that make up the quick response fleet are the elites of the Greek Navy in recent years, all new warships, and the absolute main force of the Greek Navy. These warships have also conducted a small amount of live ammunition target shooting training, and more of them are simulated tactical drills, although they are under the control of Navy soldiers during the exercises on weekdays for no other reason. The training cost of the Navy is too high. Aside from the maintenance of warships, the salaries of high-quality naval personnel, and other factors, let's just talk about the 12-inch, about 305 mm, main guns equipped by the Invincible-class battlecruisers in the Greek Navy. 2 Invincible-class battlecruisers in the Greek Navy, Trachupis and King George, each armed with 8 quadruple 12-inch guns, all imported from England. The purchase price of each gun is £80,000. The equivalent of the Greek drachma is 2 million. What is the concept? The annual income of a worker in Greece is about 1,000 drachmas. What is the lifespan of such an expensive gun? The lifespan of each gun is about 100 to 110 rounds, that is to say, such an expensive artillery can be scrapped after firing 100 shells. A 12-inch cannon shoots a shell, and the damage of the cannon alone is about 20,000 drachmas. The annual income of 20 Greek workers to use such expensive artillery to deal with a few hundred Ottomans guarding the island on Limas Island. There is some suspicion that the artillery can hit mosquitoes. The imaginary enemies of the two Invincible-class battle cruisers are the two former dreadnoughts imported from Germany by the Ottoman Navy. The expensive life of the artillery is unnecessary. The Greek Navy is far from having the luxury of using battle cruiser main guns to deal with land targets. Constantinople hesitated. Is it necessary? Seemingly. Seeing the commander's hesitation, Hydrus explained, the artillery calibers of the destroyers in the fleet are all below 150 millimeters, and they are used for shelling on the opposite shore. Even if the enemy is prepared, even if they are replaced with high explosive shells, the effect will be reduced. Not obvious. The larger the caliber, the higher the power of the artillery. The Invincible-class main gun has a caliber of 305 millimeters and a shell weight of 300 kilograms. It is naturally easy to deal with the Ottoman army lurking around Mudras Bay. Constantinople analyzed all the gathered intelligence, thinking of the order from the General Staff of Athens at home, requesting to complete the strategic requirement of blocking the Dardanelles and the coastal shipping of Asia Minor as soon as possible. According to the intelligence, the Ottomans were under strong pressure from the Balkan alliance in the direction of Macedonia after the war due to backward domestic traffic and limited land transportation capacity. They urgently needed to mobilize personnel and materials from the Asian part of the Ottomans to the European part. The port city of Thessaloniki, because it is far from the control area of the Ottoman Navy, has been blocked by the Greek Navy since the start of the war. Naturally, Ottoman ships did not dare to enter Thessaloniki from the Thermaic Gulf. However, these ships were close to the coastline, and after exiting the Dardanelles, they traveled north along the coast of Thrace and could still send supplies and personnel to Macedonia to support the Ottoman army in Macedonia. After all, the Ottoman Navy still has a certain deterrent power. Before the quick reaction fleet annihilated or severely damaged the main Ottoman fleet, the Greek warships approached the coast of Thrace to fight, which was more dangerous. Therefore, the safety of these Ottoman supply ships sailing closely along the Ottoman coastline is still guaranteed. The General Staff naturally did not want more Ottoman soldiers to enter Macedonia, because this meant that the power of the Asian part of the Ottoman Empire was likely to be used against the Greek army. It is the Navy's top priority to occupy the strategically important island of Limas as soon as possible so that the fleet can free up its hands and be careful to guard against the main Ottoman warships. So, even at some cost, it's okay. Having figured this out, Constantinople agreed to the request for fire support from Staff Officer Hydrus. After 1,500 Marines spent the rest of the night on the frigid shores of Mudras Bay, it was finally bright at about 6 o'clock in the morning. The fleet received the commander's order to target the main artillery shelling points of the two Invincible-class battle cruisers, and the entire fleet bombarded the coast of Mudras Bay to provide fire support for the Marine Corps. At 6:10, the entire fleet of 10 warships, 2 battle cruisers, and 8 destroyers fanned out around Mudras Bay to complete the preparations for the attack. The 2 Invincible-class warships opened fire first, only to see the 8 12-inch double-mounted turrets installed by the 2 war monsters aiming at the target. The ferocious and sturdy artillery muzzles slanted towards Mudras Bay, and a deafening unison sounded loudly. Afterwards, the muzzle spewed thick smoke, mixed with orange-red flames. Chirp! The 300-kilogram high-explosive bomb made several bright arcs in the air with a strong air-breaking sound. After a brief silence, more than a dozen splendid sparks rose from the hills and woods of Mudras Bay. After several main battery shells exploded, the visible targets pointed the way for the other destroyers, and the 8 destroyers also tilted metal storms toward the enemy positions. After Farrod heard the artillery fire www.uxiaspit.com, he quickly took a telescope and observed the surrounding hills and woods where the enemy was hiding. I saw the strong energy aroused by the explosion of the cannonball, which lifted all obstacles that hindered the advancement of the Marine Corps. The swirling sawdust, broken stones, and messy weeds mixed together, causing Mudras Bay to fall into chaos. During the whole hour of artillery bombardment, the jungle around Mudras Bay was bombarded in a carpet-like manner. The explosions came one after another, and the dust in the sky blocked the view and enveloped the entire position. Fedra looked at the fierce shelling in front of him, and estimated in his heart that the 305mm naval gun, when using high explosive shells, would generate violent airwaves after the explosion. Even if the soldiers were not directly hit by shrapnel and hid in the bunker, was not directly shocked to death, but also seriously injured. Around 7 in the morning, the artillery bombardment of the fleet stopped, and half an hour later, the dust shrouded above the position disappeared, revealing its true appearance. Colonel Farrar took a deep breath in the dense grass around Madras Bay. Trees were sparsely distributed, dotted with several exposed rocks. After the artillery bombardment, it was a mess. The trees and grasses were completely gone. The ground was covered with a layer of grass debris. The messy rocks were completely exposed, and the entire position was ravaged by artillery beyond recognition. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 218, Patrol. After being stunned for a while, Fielard immediately asked the messengers to notify the officers at all levels, command the soldiers, and clear the remaining enemies around. After the shelling, the Marines moved much more smoothly and encountered little effective resistance. The fierce shelling completely destroyed the enemy's will to fight. 30 minutes later, the staff at all levels gathered information about the battlefield in the mountains and forests around Madras Bay. A total of nearly 200 casualties of the enemy were found, of which more than 50 were injured according to the reaction of the captured wounded soldiers. After the shelling began, the enemy commander quickly issued an order to evacuate the troops. It was just the violent explosion that had cut off the effective communication between the troops scattered all over the place. Seeing that nothing could be done, he led a small army of less than 100 people to evacuate the battlefield and headed for the northern foot of the mountain. Generally speaking, if a unit suffers more than 30% casualties, it is considered a loss of combat effectiveness. This 300-strong Ottoman island garrison lost 2/3 directly hearing that the soldiers reported that the remnants had entered the forest, Federicide. It would take a lot of effort to completely resolve this army. According to the Navy's next strategic deployment, Madras Bay on Limas Island will be a temporary berthing port for the Rapid Response Fleet for the next period of time. These remnants are a hidden danger in case the enemy finds a loophole and takes advantage of the dark night. Like a frogman army, sneak attack the warships moored in Madras Bay, and lose these expensive weapons of war. It will be a big disaster. In his heart, he could not help but sigh at the mental toughness of the enemy commander, who still insisted on fighting and did not surrender even when there was no hope. In order to eliminate the remaining enemies, Farrar directed all the soldiers of the Marine Corps to land, divide them into several groups, and enter the mountains and forests on the island to encircle and suppress the remaining enemies. Fielard personally led a team of 300 people, climbed over the ridge in front, looked down from above, and saw a small village on the mountainside. At the northern foot of the mountain, in the shadows of the trees, a dozen low-rise houses faintly appeared, and there were people walking around in the village. The most conspicuous building is a small church with a towering white cross on the roof. Obviously, this is a village inhabited by Greeks because they were not familiar with the terrain of the island. The other search troops searched around like flies, and they didn't know when they would be able to clear this group of mouse-like enemies. Fielard thought about asking the Greeks in the village about the terrain of the island, so he led the troops to the village. The sudden appearance of hundreds of soldiers naturally attracted the attention of the villagers, who welcomed them out of the village in a panic. A young boy dressed in linen caught Fielard's attention. The little boy had black curly hair, and his dark eyes stared at the heavily armed soldiers without blinking. Fielard joked, "What are you looking at, kid? Look at you Greeks." The boy raised his head and replied without any fear. The boy's answer surprised Farrar for a moment, and asked subconsciously, "We are Greeks. Who are you?" "We are Romans," the little boy replied quickly. "Romulus, what nonsense are you talking about?" The sudden screeching interrupted Fielard, who was in a trance. A man in a red silk robe stepped forward. The cross on the robe indicated his identity. "I'm sorry, sir, this child was deceived by the Ottomans. I'm a priest in the village church, Rufus," the man said apologetically to Fielard. Farrar, who had come to his senses, said, "Father Louvres, hello." A few days ago, more than a dozen soldiers came to the village to promote these things to the villagers. "What Romans, Greeks, etc." Laufus explained that he seemed worried that Romulus' words would anger the soldiers. Now Greece is at war with the Ottoman Empire, and there are a large number of Greeks living in the Ottomans. Conservative estimates put the number of Greeks in the Ottoman territory at no less than 2 million. In order to win over these people, the authorities proclaimed them as Romans, intending to cut off their emotional ties with the Greeks and separate them from their compatriots living in Greece. Contaratus was very happy to learn that the Marine Corps had successfully gained control of Madras Bay, and immediately informed the Greek general staff of the successful capture of Limas Island. A response was quickly received, and the general staff sent a radio, requesting the fleet to annihilate or severely damage the Ottoman navy as soon as possible, and effectively blocked the shipping along the Thracian coastal route in the following days, due to the delay in the appearance of the Ottoman fleet. The Greek marines, with the cooperation of the fleet, successively occupied Imbros Island, Thassos Island, Agios Everest in the Aegean Sea, Strath Island and other islands. The Greeks continued to occupy the islands in the Aegean Sea, and the Ottomans seemed to be completely indifferent to the loss of these islands in the flagship conning tower of the Trachupis. The main force of the Ottoman navy shows no sign of leaving the Dardanelles at all. Is there any way to lure them to the Aegean Sea? Apris, the fleet staff officer, said while looking at the chart on the boat, if they can't hold on, we don't have a very good solution. The islands in the Aegean Sea, according to the current state of the Ottoman Empire, seem to be really planning to give up. Kantoratus replied helplessly. Originally thought that the naval strength of Greece and the Ottoman Empire is similar. www.uxiaspit.com. There will be a fierce naval battle in the Aegean Sea to determine the true master of the Aegean Sea. Unexpectedly, the Ottoman navy did not intend to fight at all. The accompanying destroyers, for several days, ventured to the Dardanelles for reconnaissance, but the Ottoman navy turned a blind eye. If that's the case, then send destroyers to completely block the offshore shipping from the coast of Thrace and the Dardanelles. On October 26, at 6 o'clock in the morning, in the coastal area of Thrace, 120 nautical miles northwest of Limas Island, a formation of 2 destroyers was quietly advancing in the morning fog. On the sea as the commander of this small fleet, Captain Chris stood on the bridge of the temporary flagship Stanley, feeling very excited. The mission of this small fleet is to search for imperial ships along the Ottoman coast and completely block the Ottoman Empire's offshore shipping. Morning patrols are really annoying, Sergeant Harem complained while dozing off at the observation post of the Stanley destroyer from 3 o'clock in the morning, when the human body was the most sleepy. Harem had been on this towering lookout post for 3 hours. The fleet was on a patrol mission, and the unchanging scenery on the sea made Harem very bored. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 219, Accident. When the mind is relaxed, the human body will inevitably feel drowsiness. At 6 o'clock on the Aegean Sea, the fog filled the air, and the thick moisture had soaked Sergeant Harem's uniform. Standing on the highest post in the whole ship, the strong sea breeze blew on him, and the whole body felt chilly, which made people shiver. If it wasn't for the cool wind blowing in from all over his body, Harem would definitely have fallen asleep on the towering lookout post. Have you found anything? Captain Chris's voice suddenly came from the microphone. Captain Chris, who was a little worried about the battle situation, woke up early in the morning from his sleep during the trip the day before yesterday. Captain Chris learned that, due to the delay of the Ottoman navy, on October 28, after the capture of Tenedos, Kantoratus sent a message to the Ottoman fleet. A provocative telegram was sealed: "We have occupied Tenedos and are waiting for your departure. If you need escort, we can assist you." The Greek navy sent such an insulting telegram. As long as the Ottoman navy still had a trace of blood and fighting spirit, it would not be willing to endure. The 2 destroyer formations approached along the Ottoman coast for reconnaissance, and were likely to encounter the main Ottoman fleet. The captain's voice suddenly appeared, which made Sergeant Harem refreshed and shivered. "Sir, the lookout post didn't find anything." Harem replied to the microphone. While patrolling the sea, it was foggy all around, and the visibility was only about 1,000 yards. There was really nothing abnormal in the field of vision, which calmed Sergeant Harem's fast-beating heart. Although he was taken aback by the colonel, he didn't think much about opening his mouth and replied, but he was not mistaken. He really didn't see anything on the sea. "We are now very close to the Ottoman Dardanelles Strait, and there is a possibility of encountering Ottoman warships at all times. Open your eyes and keep an eye on it. Do you understand?" The voice in the microphone said. "Yes, Captain," Harem responded loudly. Then he cheered up and continued to scout the situation on the sea. He didn't want the fleet to miss the chance to destroy the Ottomans because of his negligence. However, the thick water mist still firmly blocked the sea surface. Everything was quiet, and then relaxed a little, yawned lazily, then raised his right hand and rubbed his eyes that he could barely open. The moment he raised his head, his eyes swept across the sea, and he suddenly noticed that on the sea on the right side of the Stanley, a black smoke rose up and drifted into the air. "Spot the ship, sir," Sergeant Harem shouted into the microphone. "The black smoke on the sea is the trace of the ship at this time. The ships basically used coal as power. When sailing at sea, the black smoke from the ship's chimney was the best marker for searching for ships. As a strictly trained scout, Harem would never be wrong. Black smoke is found on the right side, sir. It is suspected that an Ottoman warship has been found. Harun put his mouth close to the microphone and repeated loudly again, while his eyes were fixed on the black smoke on the sea. The Zinlan immediately sounded a terrifying battle alarm, and at the same time, through the searchlight, it alerted the friendly ship Ramdo that the enemy was found. Just 30 seconds later, the two destroyers accelerated to a super high speed of 25 knots, changed course, and headed towards the smoke. More than 10 minutes later, a steamship appeared in front of the two destroyers, with the flag of the Ottoman Empire flying high on its mast, heading from north to south towards the Dardanelles. On the deck of the Zinlan, Captain Chris, who was holding a telescope, saw that the ship that appeared in the lens was not the expected Ottoman warship, but just a civilian ship carrying goods. He couldn't help feeling a burst of disappointment. However, the crew members who were also standing on the deck did wave their arms happily and cheered loudly. The reason is very simple. Greece's naval regulations follow the British naval tradition. According to the regulations, the enemy ships captured by the Navy at sea, as well as the goods on the enemy ships, belong to the crew of the Navy. In other words, this Ottoman ship, and the cargo on board, now belong to the crew of the two destroyers. This naval regulation is mainly to boost the morale of naval soldiers, and use naked goods to motivate soldiers to fight bravely without fear of danger. Looking at the direction of this Ottoman ship, it should have been withdrawn from Macedonia to Asia Minor. There must be many Ottoman officials and nobles on board such a ship, and these dignitaries, hurriedly withdrawing from Macedonia to Asia Minor, will definitely carry a lot of money with them. Since the start of the war, the Ottoman Empire has faced a severe situation where the Balkan alliance is attacked from three sides. The war situation is not optimistic, and it is very likely that Macedonia will be lost. Therefore, the Ottoman bureaucracy and rich people in Macedonia naturally want to bring huge wealth back to the safety of Asia Minor. After hundreds of years of searching, the Zinlan continued to send clear telegrams and light signals to the Ottoman ships, requesting the ship to stop for inspection by the Greek Navy. After this, the ship not only did not stop, but instead accelerated to escape. The speed of the ship was only 7 knots, but it was increased to about 11 knots. Captain Chris had to order shelling threats, and at the same time, he sent a telegram threatening that if he continued to escape after 10 minutes, the warship would directly fire and sink the ship. Boom! The two artillery pieces on the destroyer's bow opened fire, and the Ottoman steamship exploded, causing 2 water columns to rise around it. The Greek sailors were lying on the ship's rail, looking at their spoils with joy, and shouting excitedly, "This is a ship! This is clearly a pile of drachmas." The helpless ship, under the threat of death, could only slowly stop. Sergeant Harem on the lookout post was also happily lying on the fence, looking down at the terrified Ottomans on the opposite boat, whistling non-stop. At the same time, he calculated in his heart that he discovered this Ottoman ship, and if he made credit, he would definitely be commended by the captain, and at the same time, he would be rewarded handsomely. I casually tidied up the navy cap on my head, and glanced at the sea at will. Due to the discovery of the ship at this time, the sky was already bright. On the sea in the east, the sky had been rendered red by the sunrise, and the visibility on the sea was improved a lot. The pupils shrank suddenly, and on the sea in the southeast direction, black smoke billows very conspicuously, and the thick smoke is divided into several strands. Looking at the posture of the black smoke, it is clearly a sign that only a fleet exists. It is suspected that the enemy fleet has been discovered. Sergeant Harem shouted loudly to the deck, and he didn't care about the microphone, but instead shouted directly to the captain on the deck. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 220, Bait and Sneak Attack. Sergeant Harem's harsh alarm sound made the crew members who were immersed in the joy of capturing the enemy freighter unable to react in time, and they were suddenly at a loss. The crew members who were confused about the situation raised their necks and looked suspiciously at Sergeant Harem at the lookout post on the mast. Everyone's faces were full of doubts. It was obvious that the Ottoman ship had already been captured. Right? Are there other Ottoman ships? It has been several days since the war began, and the Ottoman Navy did not dare to take a step beyond the Dardanelles. The cowardice of the enemy made the Greek Navy look down upon the Ottoman Navy and became arrogant. Everyone never thought that the Ottoman Navy would dare to rush into the Aegean Sea. Everyone hesitated, and the anxious Sergeant Harem looked around, and saw that the sea area in the southeast, which was originally black and smoky, was now slowly showing the masts of ships. Sergeant Harem, who was only suspicious at first, can now be sure that these ships are the Ottoman Navy. There is a big difference between civilian ships and military ships, one of which is speed for economic considerations. Generally speaking, the limit speed of ordinary civil ships rarely exceeds 12 knots. In most cases, civil ships will maintain a constant speed at an economical cruising speed of 6 to 7 knots, which saves fuel. The speed of several ships that are approaching in front of them obviously exceeds 10 knots. If these warships are not warships, it is difficult to explain this phenomenon. Thinking of the insulting plaintext telegram sent to the Ottoman Navy yesterday by the commander of the Navy, Commander Kantaridis, Sergeant Harem confirmed his judgment even more. Captain Chris, a large mast has appeared in the southeastern sea area, and is approaching us at a high speed of no less than 10 knots. Before he could pay attention to the title, Sergeant Harem put his hands in front of his mouth in a trumpet shape, anxiously shout out to Sergeant Chris on deck. Colonel Chris was stunned. For a moment, his thoughts turned around, and a hint of enlightenment came to his mind. This Ottoman ship was a bait. Such an idea had just arisen in my mind, but it was denied by myself. Among the 8 destroyers of the Quick Reaction Fleet, there was also a twin destroyer formation, which was tasked with patrolling the Dardanelles. The Ottoman fleet appeared in front of him with such great fanfare, so why did the 2 destroyers not send out radio alarms? The Ottoman fleet rushed out of the Dardanelles, and it was impossible to hide from their detection. After all, the Dardanelles was only a few dozen nautical miles wide. Could it be that the 2 destroyers that were patrolling the Dardanelles were all sunk by the main Ottoman fleet? It was too late to think about it. Captain Chris looked at the crew on the deck and ordered loudly, "Everyone return to their posts. We may encounter the main Ottoman fleet." The crew on the ship heard the captain's order at this time, and they also reacted, understood their own situation, and walked towards the hatch. A busy scene on the deck. Having said that, Chris turned to the signal soldiers behind him and said, "Send an alarm to the destroyer Rando and let them prepare for battle." The signal trooper recorded the order on the document, turned around and was about to go to the communication room, but heard Captain Chris' request, "Also, send a telegram to the flagship immediately. We have encountered the main fleet of the Ottoman Navy, requesting assistance." Having said that, Chris hurried to the bridge. That's where the fleet commander should be at this time, on the sea to the southeast of the 2 fleets of the Stanley. In the flagship bridge of the Ottoman Navy, Vice Admiral Ramiz Bey of the Ottoman Navy, nervously holding a single-pass telescope in his hand, looked at the increasingly thick black smoke in his field of vision. The mood is getting more and more agitated. It's getting closer. It's getting closer. It will soon be possible to teach these arrogant Greeks a hard lesson. Yesterday, after receiving a clear telegram from the Greeks, Razmanbi, who is already under enormous pressure, almost exploded his lungs. Clear code telegrams are telegrams that everyone can receive. After such telegrams are sent, if the Ottoman Navy does not fight, let alone what the international community thinks, even people from all walks of life in the Ottoman Empire will not be able to see it. For the Dark Ottoman Empire, the financial revenue has not improved for a long time, and the Navy has always been known for its high cost. Building a navy with sufficient combat effectiveness was originally a difficult task for the Ottoman government. The Ottoman Navy, which has invested a lot of money, has achieved few achievements during the war with Greece in 1897. Due to the disrepair of the Ottoman Navy warships, no new warships joined the Navy for a long time. At that time, the Ottoman Navy existed in name only. After the war, due to the weakness of the Navy, the Greeks took advantage of the loopholes. The Ottoman Empire took a hard look and bought 2 former dreadnoughts on loan from the close Germans to maintain its position in the Aegean Sea. As a result, in 1912, when a war broke out between the Ottoman Empire and Italy over Libya, the Ottoman Navy did not participate in the war due to the huge gap between the Ottoman Navy and the Italian Navy. Public account, book Friends Basecamp. www.uxiaspit.com can also receive cash. Objectively speaking, in these 2 wars, the Ottoman Navy really had no ability to affect the war situation. Hers was too weak. However, logically speaking, the Navy, which has spent a huge amount of money on construction, cannot be counted on at all when the war comes, and the Ottoman people are logically unacceptable. In fact, before the clear telegram, Razizbi, the supreme commander of the Ottoman Navy, still planned to let the Ottoman Navy stick to the Dardanelles rather than enter the Aegean Sea for a decisive battle with the Greek Navy. The reason is obvious. The strength of the Ottoman Navy on the books is not the opponent of the Greek Navy at present. The core warships in the Ottoman Navy are the 2 Brandenburg-class pre-dreadnought battleships purchased from Germany. And the other warships are old. The main force of the Greek Navy is 2 Invincible-class battlecruisers purchased from the United Kingdom. After all, there is a whole generation difference between the 2. Where can a former dreadnought like the Brandenburg class be the opponent of a quasi-dreadnought like the Invincible class, among various data indicators, except for armor, The Brandenburg class is far from the invincible class in terms of maneuverability and firepower. Combat at sea is different from battle on the road. www.wuxiaspit.com. Land battle. If the strength is weak, there is not necessarily no chance of winning in land battles. The weaker party may occupy favorable terrain, wait for work, and attack the enemy or lure the enemy to go deep, clear the field, lengthen the opponent's supply line, and weaken the enemy's offensive ability. These all have the potential to allow the weaker side of the army to win, but naval warfare is different. The sea is unobstructed and unobstructed, and there is no danger at all to defend, and there is no such thing as a fortified wall on the sea. After all, the ability of a warship to move at sea is not comparable to that of the army. It is unimaginable for the army to travel 1,000 miles in one day, but it is nothing to the navy. Therefore, for naval battles, the weaker side has little chance of winning unless a miracle occurs. Despite the humiliation, Rizizbi deeply understands that anger cannot solve any problems, and the current strength of the Greek navy is indeed higher than that of the Ottoman navy. Although the Ottoman executives were also dissatisfied with the performance of the navy, they also understood the reality of the insufficient strength of the Ottoman navy. In fact, the weakness of the Ottoman navy is not just a problem of the lack of new warships. Other problems are more serious. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 221, Gap. As the de facto supreme commander of the Ottoman navy, Rizizbi is even more convinced that the reason why the Ottoman navy is inferior to the Greek navy is the status quo of the Ottoman Empire. Exchange good books. Pay attention to the VX public account. Canwin Base. Follow now and get cash red envelopes. If the gap between the Ottoman navy and the Greek navy is only in terms of warship performance, even if it is still unlikely to defeat the Greek navy, it will not make the Ottoman navy dare not even go out of the gate. The performance gap between the warships of the two countries is only on the bright side. The real weakness of the Ottoman navy is more deadly in less obvious ways due to limited funds. The warships of the Ottoman navy have not been effectively maintained. Under the action of mechanical wear and rust, the two battleships purchased in 1906, the original speed of 16 knots, now the maximum speed can only reach 10 knots. The second is the disparity in the quality of the crew. Greece is a maritime country. In the era of city-states, the Greeks began to row boats to trade in the Mediterranean Sea. Now Greece is also a big shipping country. Greeks are happy to be crew members, and the society has a strong atmosphere for learning sailing skills. Coupled with the Greek Naval Technical College, a steady stream of shipping talents has been cultivated. Therefore, the Greek navy can recruit enough talents. Unlike Greece, the Ottoman Empire is a land country, and it is not a big shipping country. There are simply not many qualified crew members in the Ottomans. As for naval officers with higher ability requirements, it is even more appalling. The education of the Ottoman Empire itself was very backward. Most of the officers in the navy completed their studies through German and British education, and this status quo has led to another trouble. That is, the Ottomans who completed their naval studies overseas have seen with their own eyes the thriving society of the great powers. These new type talents who have completed their overseas studies are naturally elite talents with ideals and pursuits in the eyes of the old Ottoman bureaucrats. These people spent the government's money to study abroad, and after they completed their studies, they turned against their own country. The naval talents, which were already in short supply, hated the Ottoman officials. Thinking of this, Rizizbi is also full of resentment. If it weren't for the obstruction of these stubborn and conservative bureaucrats, the Ottoman Empire's purchase of 2 super dreadnoughts from Britain would have been completed long ago. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world's naval technologies emerged in an endless stream, and the turbulence was fueled by the naval competition between Germany and the United Kingdom. The new warships a few years ago were completely outdated after a few years. In just a dozen years, armored cruisers, former dreadnoughts, strategic cruisers, dreadnoughts, and now super dreadnoughts. In the eyes of feudal officials, the world is static. They cannot understand what is called rapid change and what is called technological innovation. In their eyes, they are also large ships of 10,000 tons, equipped with indestructible iron armor and powerful artillery. The Turkish name of the ship was not as powerful as the 2 Greek ships. They don't even understand why the Navy's ships, even if they do nothing, need to spend a lot of money on maintenance and military exercises due to the backward industry in the Ottomans. The shipbuilding industry is weak in technology, and the cost of maintenance is also high, and it is unable to provide timely and effective maintenance for the Navy's warships. The warships of the Ottoman Navy have been moored in the naval port for many years, rusting and falling ashes. They didn't think of the Navy until the war was over. There is a clear gap between the Ottoman Navy and the Greek Navy in terms of warship performance, naval personnel, and logistical maintenance. Rizvi knew this disparity in his heart, and naturally he would not lead the Ottoman navy to fight a sea battle that was inevitable until Cantaridis's clear code telegram caused an uproar in the Ottomans. At a special moment when the Ottoman army was fighting fiercely against the Balkan alliance in Macedonia, the timid navy was extremely dazzling under strong domestic pressure. Jamal Pasha deliberately went to the naval port, intending to persuade Rizvi to fight. In Haymal's words, even if it knows that it is invincible, the navy should take some positive actions to inform the public that the warships that the Ottoman Empire spent countless money on are useful after all. The two super dreadnoughts purchased by the Ottoman Empire from the United Kingdom are still being built on the slipway, although after the outbreak of the war with the Balkan alliance, they have been suspended due to lack of money to pay the bills. In addition to loans from foreign countries, a considerable part of the purchase funds for these two warships was obtained through social donations. Even elementary school students in Constantinople donated money for these two super dreadnought ships. Why did the Ottoman people react so strongly to the Greeks' clearly insulting telegrams? Because not long ago, everyone enthusiastically donated money to buy new warships. In the end, the navy, which everyone enthusiastically supported, was like this. Although it was reluctant, Rizvi was forced to agree to lead the navy into the Aegean Sea. The lieutenant general, who knew the gap between the enemy and us, did not plan to fight the Greek fleet head-on. After preliminary analysis, the trajectory of the Greek warships has been roughly ascertained. In the absence of the Ottoman navy, the Greek destroyers were mainly responsible for reconnaissance and patrols along the coast of the Aegean Sea. The main force of the Greek navy, the two Invincible-class battlecruisers, are mainly anchored in the port of Limas Island to cultivate. After Rizvi's meticulous calculation, a simple and effective strategy came out: use the bait to drag the Greek destroyer, create an opportunity for the main fleet to annihilate, and immediately return to the Dardanelles to avoid the two Greek capital ship. As long as the results are achieved, www.uxias.com, the Ottoman navy will benefit endlessly. And it can well fight back against those officials who oppose the construction of the navy and prove the correctness of investing in the navy. Therefore, last night, under the cover of darkness, the Ottoman fleet sailed out of the Dardanelles unknowingly and entered the Aegean Sea under the cover of night. The two Greek destroyers patrolling the Dardanelles did not notice the abnormality at all. For this plan, Rizvi believes that the probability of success is high. Even if there is no success, there is nothing to lose after all. This is the naval strength of the entire Ottoman Empire against several auxiliary warships of the Greek navy. As for the two destroyers in the Dardanelles, they are also part of the Ottoman fleet. When the fleet returns, they can be dealt with. Along the way, the two former dreadnought battleships Barbarossa, Sea Reading, and Torgat were escorted by the protective cruiser Masidiai and 4 destroyers, a total of 7 warships, Majestic and Majestic, chased to the target sea area, reporting to the general. The Talon steamship, which was acting as a bait, sent a telegram. They encountered 2 Greek destroyers at a distance of 120 nautical miles northeast of Limas Island and asked for fleet support. The messenger reported the translated message to the brooding Rizvi. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 222, Meet the Enemy. Mudras Bay on Limas Island, the sea breeze is blowing, the sun is rising, the sea is gleaming, sparkling, and it looks peaceful, and there is no trace of war at all. The USS Turcupis and USS King George, as well as 2 destroyer warships, were quietly moored in the naval port. On the deck of the battleship Turcupis, the crew was doing the morning cleanup work. The soldiers took mops and brushes, bent over to clean the deck, and looked busy. Sir, Wang Lin telegram, found the Ottoman fleet. The breathless correspondent, too late to pay attention to etiquette, ran straight to the commander of the fleet, Cantaridis, who was having breakfast. Heard this, his face changed greatly. He threw down his knife and fork, walked quickly to the correspondent, took the telegram, carefully confirmed the content of the telegram, and then said with a serious face, "Sound the alarm. Gather all the staff and go to support immediately." The correspondent immediately walked into the communication room next to the bridge to send a telegram, while Cantaridis was walking back and forth in the bridge. Considering the purpose of the Ottoman fleet that suddenly appeared, the behavior of the Ottoman fleet made him a little puzzled. The maximum speed of the Greek destroyers could reach 26 knots. As far as he knew, the Ottoman fleet had been in disrepair and had suffered a serious drop in speed. It was impossible to catch up with the 2 Greek destroyers. The destroyers in Greece are all cutting-edge warships that will serve within 3 years. Such warships are determined to escape, and the old warships of the Ottoman Empire cannot catch up. let alone sink. But the enemy dispatched the entire fleet with great fanfare, with a clear target, 2 destroyers patrolling the Ottoman coastal areas. The 2 Invincible-class battle cruisers of the Greek Navy were purchased from the United Kingdom. Since they are purchased warships, their performance and parameters are certainly no secret at present. Turkey has ordered 2 super dreadnoughts in the UK. When choosing warships, the Ottomans must know the situation of the Invincible-class battle cruisers, so now the Ottomans wisely gave up the idea of dealing with the Greek war cruisers, and aimed directly at the Greek destroyers. The 8 1,500-ton destroyers were all built by Greek shipyards. Naturally, the Ottomans did not understand their true performance. In fact, such important parameters as the maximum speed of warships are very secret military secrets, and the Ottomans will naturally not know the speed of Greek destroyers. In order to reduce fuel consumption, warships usually sail at cruising speed. Unless under special circumstances, warship commanders generally do not allow sailing at the highest speed. Ships sailing at maximum speed for a long time will cause irreversible damage to warships. Therefore, the maximum speed of a warship will not be known unless it is a coincidence. Thinking of this, Cantaratus was overjoyed. The enemy made a mistake, and this was the opportunity for the Greek fleet. Although Ramisby, who was under pressure, racked his brains and seemed to have come up with a plan to solve the Ottoman Navy's plight, there was still an obvious omission in this cramming behavior. Thinking of this, Cantaratus immediately walked into the communication cabin and instructed the communication soldiers, "Power the Zionlan. Let them hold the Ottoman fleet and create time for the main fleet." The 2 opponents used the bait strategy. Invariably, the Ottoman fleet used a steamship intended to deal with destroyers patrolling Greece. The Greek side used 2 destroyers as bait, but the purpose was the main fleet of the Ottoman Empire. After 20 minutes of preparation, the entire fleet sailed towards the sea area where the incident occurred at a high speed of 20 knots. On the vast sea, the situation of Zinlan and Rando was miserable. Since receiving the telegram from the flagship, the 2 destroyers on the decoy mission have not dared to directly throw off the Ottoman fleet at high speed, and have maintained a cruising speed of 12 knots, keeping a certain distance from the Ottoman fleet. Boom! A few more shells exploded around the Zinlan, creating a water column that shot up into the sky. The hull of the Zionlan suddenly vibrated violently, causing the entire crew to stumble. Sergeant Heron watched in horror as a white water column appeared on the starboard side of the hull, and shouted loudly into the microphone. Near missing Colonel Chris in the command cabin sank in his heart. The violent turbulence of the hull made the unprepared Colonel Chris slump. The embarrassed Colonel Chris didn't care to straighten his hat and shouted into the microphone, "All departments report damage." Happening in his heart, he cursed secretly, "Damn Ottomans, it's really good luck." After several rounds of artillery fire, Captain Chris had already figured out the strength of the opposing Turkey. In terms of artillery skills alone, it was really a mess. They have been shelled for several rounds, and the pattern of each round of shelling is that there is no pattern. The bullets landed in a mess, not at all like the standard of artillery skills that a regular navy should have. So far, this near miss is the best result of the Ottoman fleet. No abnormality in the engine room, no abnormality in the boiler room. The steering gear cabin is slightly flooded and is being repaired. The recovery from the microphone made Colonel Chris calm down a little. The formation of the 2 destroyers fled to the northwest. The purpose was to cooperate with the commander's decoy plan and lead the Ottoman fleet away from the Dardanelles as much as possible to create opportunities for the main fleet. In the command module of the battleship Barbarossa Hayreddin, Ramisby, who was holding a telescope, looked at the figures of the 2 Greek destroyers surrounded by the blast of water, his face gloomy. After an hour of negotiation, Ramisby also felt that it was difficult to ride a Tiger. The tonnage of the Greek destroyers has reached a displacement of 1,500 tons. The 4 destroyers in the Ottoman naval fleet, with a tonnage of only 300 or 400 tons, are not the opponents of the Greek destroyers at all. The 2 battleships and the armored cruiser Missididea, which can threaten the Greek destroyers, cannot catch up with the Greek destroyers. www.uxiaspit.com. In Ramisby's view, the tonnage reaches 1,500 tons of destroyers, can be called a light cruiser, stern, torpedo, target, enemy battleship. Colonel Chris said solemnly, "At present, the distance between the 2 sides is no more than 3,000 yards, and they have entered the attack range of the torpedo. This is a very risky move." If it weren't for the poor artillery skills of the Ottoman Navy, it gave Colonel Chris confidence. Under normal circumstances, those who dare to do this are absolutely lunatic. The 2 triple-mounted 450mm torpedo tubes at the stern of Zionlan began to rotate slowly. The target is locked. The azimuth is 50 degrees to the right. The target speed is 11 knots. The distance is 3,000, and the depth is 1 meter. Ready. To launch, the launch interval is 3 seconds. Launch driven by high-pressure gas. 6 fish sprang out of the launch tube in less than 30 seconds, flew overboard, and fell into the sea, penetrating the fish under the sea surface. The engine drives the propeller to start to rotate, pulling out 6 white tracks on the sea surface. Captain Chris didn't want the enemy fleet to shoot at his side so comfortably, and wanted to cause some trouble for the enemy, so he wanted to disrupt the enemy's formation with fish. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 223, Raging Seas. Inside the towering and majestic bridge of the battle-cruiser Turquoise, Admiral Cantaratus looked at the Aegean Sea where the fog was gradually dissipating, and his excitement and anticipation overflowed on the vast sea of smoke. The 4 speeding ships were running at full power, galloping in the direction of the Stanley. The 4 ships lined up in a double line, drawing 2 white tracks on the sea. On the masts of each warship, the flag of the Kingdom of Greece fluttered in the wind. This is the most powerful naval force in the Greek navy. Except for a few old warships, Cantaratus was not at peace in his heart. He was a little worried about the 2 destroyers taking on the decoy mission. The communication room had just received a telegram from the Stanley. The Stanley had just been hit by an Ottoman warship damage. In fact, this decoy mission is not easy for the 2 destroyers to carry out. Although the speed of the 2 destroyers can reach a speed of more than 20 knots, the other party must be made to think that there is a chance to destroy the 2 warships, and the other party will not give up. This also means that the 2 destroyers need to slow down. If the 2 warships are kept within the firepower range of the Ottoman warships for a long time, the 2 destroyers whose firepower is absolutely weak will be greatly increased by the possibility of being hit by enemy artillery in order to ensure the success rate of the main fleet's interception. Cantaratus did not order the fleet to go directly to rescue the 2 Greek warships, but first detoured in the direction of the Dardanelles to ensure that even if the enemy noticed the abnormal situation, he would not think about it. There is no rush to return to the Dardanelles from various indications. Although the strength of the Ottoman navy is weak, the commander of the Ottoman navy is indeed quite capable. Flagship of the USS Barbarossa. High reading as the pursuit time increased and the fleet's position became farther and farther from the Dardanelles, Remisby's heart became more and more uneasy. In our fleet, there are only 2 280mm guns installed on the Brandenburg battleships, which can reach the position of the enemy destroyers. The 2 destroyers kept this distance. The pursuit time has lasted all morning, but the artillery skills displayed on the 2 battleships made Remisby feel desperate during the pursuit. Greek warships occasionally fire torpedoes. Although they did not cause damage to their own ships, they successfully interfered with the formation of the fleet. Every time the opponent launches a torpedo, it will disrupt the formation of our warships. The restless Remisby, the 2 damned Greeks on the side of the telescope, suddenly accelerated away from the fleet, and according to observation, the speed would not be lower than 15 knots. Stop the pursuit. The fleet will return immediately and notify the other warships. Seeing the sudden performance of the Greek destroyer, Remisby still didn't understand, and he was fooled at this time. He finally confirmed the unease in his heart, but his heart was full of bitterness. It would have been better if he had been a little more resolute at the time. If the difference in strength was relatively large, he should not have led the fleet out of the Dardanelles at 2:13 p.m. The 7 fleets of the Ottoman navy urgently turned their course and headed towards the Dardanelles. When the fleet traveled 19 kilometers northeast of Limas Island, there was a loud boom, and 50 meters next to the target, the violent explosion caused a water column to rise into the sky, and the waves generated caused target to the target swayed like a lone boat in a storm. The 305mm naval gun is the Greek Invincible-class battle-cruiser. The sound of the watchtower's siren came through the microphone. Guided by telegrams from the 2 destroyers, the Cantaratus fleet moved from the south towards the Ottoman fleet at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The sentries patrolling the sea passed a message that a large black smoke column was found on the northern sea, which was suspected to be the main fleet of the Ottoman navy. Linear array. Cantaratus gave the first order. The 4 battleships originally in a 2-line array quickly changed their formation, with 2 destroyers assisting them, and the other 2 battlecruisers forming a battle line, ready to take on the enemy immediately afterwards. Cantaratus delivered an enthusiastic speech to the entire fleet through the light signal. By the power of God, the will of the king, and the name of justice, I sail with unstoppable force, and I will be victorious against the nation. The enemy is full of confidence. Immediately afterwards, the 2 battlecruisers accelerated towards the Ottoman fleet, followed by 2 destroyers at a distance of 12,000 yards. The 8 305mm cannons on the Turquoise were the first to fire. The Ottoman fleet consists of 7 warships, with the flagship Barbarossa C reading taking the lead. When the distance between the two fleets reached 8,000 yards, the Ottoman fleet began to fight back. The cannons roared and made a deafening roar. The cannonballs from both sides pierced the air, making a complicated and harsh sound of piercing the air, splashing water and rolling waves. After a few rounds of confrontation, Constantinople saw that his artillery was still unable to get a hit, and ordered the fleet to accelerate to 24 knots. After passing the enemy's lead ship, Barbarossa, the entire fleet turned northward. The speed of the entire Ottoman fleet is 10 knots, and the huge disadvantage in speed makes the Ottoman fleet very passive when facing the enemy to seize the T horizontal head. Constantinople actually wanted to take advantage of the speed advantage of his own warships to seize the T horizontal head when the entire Greek fleet was in front of the Ottoman fleet. The Greek 305mm cannon, which had the upper hand, focused fire on Barbarossa C reading, cross. Shot. The sentinel's excited voice came from the microphone. The so-called straddle shot means that the projectile's landing point surrounds the enemy ship, which means that the next artillery fire www.wuxiaspit.com has a very high probability of hitting a 300 kg armor-piercing projectile smashed into the 120mm main armor belt of the Barbarossa reading, instantly igniting a gorgeous orange fireball, and the violent vibration made everyone feel the ship. The body leaned to the other side. The entire broadside was swept away by fragments and turned into a mess. The captain of the Barbarossa reading, Colonel Tafeo, hurriedly inquired about the situation. And Ramaz Bey on the side was also full of anxiety. The answer from each cabin turned out to be that the main armor belt was seriously dented, but the Greek ships were not able to penetrate at all. Whether it was Ramaz Bey or Tafeolu, he let out a long sigh of relief, although this shell did not cause more serious damage to the Barbarossa reading. The Barbarossa reading did look a bit miserable at this time because it has been in service for many years. The Barbarossa reading is painted every year on the hull. The 4-centimeter thick paint on the hull burned immediately after being shot. Seeing the billowing black smoke coming out of the enemy's lead ship, all the soldiers in the Greek fleet cheered eagerly. In the next half hour, Barbarossa reading was hit twice again, and the entire battleship was shrouded in raging fire. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224. Naval Battle Results. The battleship Barbarossa C reading was almost completely surrounded by flames. Although the turret is intact and the power system does not seem to be damaged, the superstructure of the Barbarossa C reading has almost disappeared, and the raging fire can no longer be contained. Although the Ottoman soldiers still hold water pipes and spray seawater towards the fire, want to save the flagship of the Ottoman Navy. Seeing that the Barbarossa reading, surrounded by fire, was still fighting back, Constantinople, who was observing with a telescope, had to sigh at the Ottomans' will to fight, while cursing the sturdiness of the German battleships. No matter what, the Barbarossa reading is an old German ex-dreadnought ship, and the 300-kilogram armor-piercing projectile fired by the 305mm artillery still penetrated the battered hull after penetrating the 120mm armor belt of Barbarossa reading. A shell penetrated down the 50mm dome and exploded at the position behind the turret seat ring. The shell that hit the key position not only caused the number 2 turret to be severely deformed and stuck, but also caused fires in several cabins. After the explosion, the number 1 and number 2 turrets are very close to the ammunition depot shared by the 2 turrets. If the fire cannot be contained, once the ammunition depot is detonated, the Barbarossa reading may explode into 2 pieces and the keel will break. Colonel Tafeo ignored Rizisby's reaction, and shouted directly into the microphone, "Immediately fill the ammunition depot with water, immediately fill the ammunition store with water." "Yes, Captain, this is the ammunition depot. I have opened the water injection valve." The voice from the microphone made Colonel Tafeo, who had already raised his heart in his throat, take a deep breath. Although the doom of the Barbarossa reading was prevented, Colonel Tafeo, who had calmed down, was still nervous. The situation of the Barbarossa C reading, which was hit by several shells, has obviously reached the worst point. In addition to the warship still floating at sea, there are only 2 208mm artillery pieces left to threaten the enemy's warships. The speed has dropped seriously, and the current speed has dropped to 6 knots, almost completely losing combat effectiveness now. Barbarossa reading, who used to be the flagship, has lost the ability to remain in the battle line. The speed of 6 knots will drag down the entire fleet, and now the Greek fleet is chasing after them. If the fleet has to take into account the Barbarossa sea rating, it is bound to reduce the speed of the entire fleet to 6 knots, which may cause the entire fleet to pay more big price. The uneasy colonel looked at the commander Rizizbi and said, "Your Excellency, what should we do now?" Rizizbi understood what Tefeo Road meant. The colonel wanted the Barbarossa rating to stay in the rear, to hold back the Greek fleet as much as possible and create time for the main fleet to get out of trouble. When Rizizbi heard Tefeo Road's question, he just sighed, feeling sad for the tragic experience of the Barbarossa rating. If it weren't for the fact that the pressure on the navy and the Ottomans was too great, in any case, such a navy level should not have joined the war. The navy is a high-tech arm. Without long-term and stable capital investment, it is impossible to build a powerful navy. The century-old navy is not just talk until now. This naval battle has been like a one-sided massacre by the Greek navy. And the Ottoman navy failed to hit even a single shell. This kind of achievement can really make people feel ashamed and indignant, to say it. Rizizbi, who said nothing, walked to the chart on the table, stared at the map of the East Aegean Sea, and quickly thought about countermeasures in his mind. Looking at the island of Goksh, which is only 2 to 3 kilometers away from the fleet on the chart, a crazy idea came to Rizizbi's mind. After thinking about it, he finally made up his mind and said to the signal trooper, "Immediately inform the battleship Torgut and let this ship temporarily serve as the flagship, and Captain Hammett temporarily serves as the fleet commander." After speaking, he looked at Colonel Tefeo Road. "Full rudder, get out of the queue and sail towards Goksh Island." Colonel Tefeo Road was taken aback by this order. "Your Majesty, Commander, don't you think?" "Okay, let's execute the order." Rizizbi reached out his hand to interrupt his subordinate's questioning and said firmly, seeing that the commander had made up his mind, he knew that he didn't want to talk about it. The captain of Barbarossa rating, Colonel Tefeo, began to command the damage control personnel to try to save the life of the battleship. After the front ammunition bay was filled with water, the number 1 turret not only failed to fire, but Barbarossa sea rating completely lost 1/3 of its power. Moreover, the large amount of seawater pouring into the ammunition bay caused the weight of the bow to increase greatly, and the hull of the ship was greatly increased. Leaning forward, the speed is further reduced in the face of the dominant Greek navy. The fate of the Barbarossa rating really can only be left to the commander's last-ditch effort in the battle line of the Ottoman warships. The Barbarossa rating, whose fire had diminished, suddenly rushed out of the array, changed course, and headed south. Cantoriadis, who saw this phenomenon, immediately reacted. This was the enemy's tactic to survive by docking his tail. In my heart, I felt that the battleships had rough skin and thick flesh, and they deserved to be the mainstay of the navies of various countries. They had excellent sink resistance. Even the 305mm caliber cannons equipped by the Invincible-class battle cruisers could still move freely after a few hits. To be content with sinking the Ottoman Navy's flagship Barbarossa rating is a huge honor. It's just such a rare opportunity to seriously damage the Ottoman Navy. It's really a pity to let it go. It is natural to continue chasing the main Ottoman fleet, but the fleet is already very close to the Ottoman coast, and will soon enter the strait between Goksh Island and Çanakkale Peninsula. www.uxiaspit.com. Considering that this is too much close to the Ottoman coast, the Greek navy was not familiar with the water conditions there and the distribution of mines arranged by the Ottoman navy. And Constantinople did not dare to take the risk of the only 2 main battleships of the Greek navy. The weapons of mines are very cost-effective. The ships of the Greek fleet are all fast warships with weak armor. If a mine is fired, even if it does not sink on the spot, it will be severely damaged, seemingly creating an opportunity for the main fleet to escape. The 4 destroyers in the Ottoman fleet accelerated and charged towards the Greek fleet, making a deadly blow soon. In order to contain the pursuit and interrupt the formation of the Greek fleet, the torpedo was unintentionally the most effective weapon. Several white tracks extended towards the Greek fleet. While each ship was dodging, they fired wildly at the 4 destroyers in order to interfere with the enemy's destroyers firing fish. An Ottoman destroyer was hit in a row and exploded on the spot after this wave of torpedo attacks. Seeing that the opponent was about to enter the strait on the side of Goksh Island, he did not dare to pursue it. The entire fleet turned back to look for the Ottoman battleship in the rear, but saw that the ship actually washed up on the beach of Goksh Island and turned into a fixed fort. The flagship of the Ottoman Navy chose to run aground on the beach. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website, Chapter 225, Balkan Situation. On the evening of October 28, at 6 p.m., The frontline headquarters of the Greek Macedonian Legion. Constantine's attendant, Colonel Hammett, holding a telegram in his hand, walked into the military tent with a beaming face, and saw the Greek army commander-in-chief, Crown Prince Constantine, who was processing official documents at his desk, excitedly said, "Your Excellency Commander, good news." As he spoke, he put the telegram in front of Constantine. The tired Constantine, upon hearing the announcement from Colonel Hammett, the attendant, took off the glasses on the bridge of his nose and rubbed his sore eyes from reading documents for a long time. "What is the good news about, Your Majesty?" "Just yesterday, our Greek navy taught the Ottomans a hard lesson in the Aegean Sea. The fast fleet led by Commander Cantorides won a great victory in yesterday's naval decisive battle and sank the enemy country. The tonnage of the warship is more than 10,000 tons, including a battleship and a destroyer." Seeing Constantine's exhausted appearance, Officer Hammett picked up the telegram and read in an excited tone. When Constantine heard the news, he was also stunned. He stood up and picked up the telegram to confirm it himself. Although it has long been expected that the Greek navy will have a victory, after all, the Greek navy is far stronger than the same period in the original history. In the original historical time and space, when this war broke out, the only thing the Greek navy could rely on was an armored cruiser purchased from Italy, named George Avilov under the command of Cantorides. The Greeks created an incredible miracle with such an embarrassing warship, plus a number of old and outdated warships, and had two main ships of the Ottoman navy. Claims that a warship has defeated an empire. The current Greek navy is far stronger than the same period in history. Historically, the Greek navy had the money to buy expensive war cruisers. There is no reason why the Greek navy could not surpass the Ottoman navy, but what kind of results can be achieved is indeed an unknown. When Cantorides reported the results of the battle to the general staff, he frankly pointed out that one of the enemy's main battleships, the flagship Barbarossa Sea Reading, was hit hard. In order to boost the morale of the people at home, the Brandenburg-class battleship purchased by the Ottoman navy from Germany was also regarded as the result of the navy's victory and publicity. Such a victory is already a very good result for the current Greek navy when the enemy knows that its strength is weak and does not have a tenacious will to fight. There are not many opportunities for the Greek navy to sink the opponent's ships. After reading the telegram, Constantine pondered for a moment and said happily, "In this way, the route that the Ottomans supported the Macedonian region by sea was cut off by us." Good news. After the defeat in this naval battle, it is basically impossible for the Ottoman navy to attack again, and the Greek navy can confidently and boldly occupy the remaining Aegean islands that are still under the actual control of the Ottoman Empire. Also, when I went to the communication room to get the telegram, I also heard that His Excellency Emmanuel, Chief of the General Staff, will arrive at our frontline headquarters this afternoon. Colonel Hammett continued to tell what he had heard. Constantine nodded, indicating that he understood, and then paced back and forth in the tent. The current Macedonian Legion is currently in a stalemate after the last war. The territory of Greece was close to Thessaloniki, which made Thessaloniki almost a border city, and the Greek army was also eyeing this important city. In this case, the Ottoman army naturally strengthened the city's defenses. As long as you glance at the map and have a little strategic awareness, you can perceive the importance of this city. The Macedonian territory owned by Ottoman Turkey is generally surrounded by Greece, Bulgaria and Serbia. Greece is in the southwest, Serbia is in the north, Bulgaria is in the northeast, and Austria and Macedonia, which is deep in the Balkans, relies on southeastern Macedonia to maintain overland contact with the Ottomans once the city of Thessaloniki falls. It means that the Ottoman troops deployed in the rest of Macedonia face the risk of being cut off from the back once the city is lost. All Ottoman deployments in Macedonia will collapse. Not to mention, the city itself is a transportation hub and a commercial center. Precisely for these reasons, according to information gathered by Greece from various sources, the Ottoman army deployed nearly 100,000 troops near Thessaloniki. In addition, the Ottoman military also built two strong fortresses near Thessaloniki with the help of the Germans. The two fortresses are the fortress of Bargani and the fortress of Kastratisa. The fortress was constructed with concrete bunkers, artillery and machine gun positions, trenches, barbed wire and searchlights. According to the German design, these two fortresses alone were guarded by a Turkish army of about 35,000 men, forming a solid fortress. Thessaloniki itself is just a plain city, and there are no gates nearby. But after these two fortresses were built, the city became a difficulty for the Greek army. Therefore, after the Macedonian army initially contacted the two fortresses and carried out a tentative attack, Constantine immediately stopped the attack. In this era of no aircraft and tanks, if you want to use the flesh and blood of soldiers, www.wuxiaspit.com, to conquer the enemy's heavy defense fortifications, You must pay huge casualties. Moreover, the combination of the enemy's trenches, barbed wire and Maxim machine guns also touched Constantine's sensitive nerves subconsciously. Constantine did not want to attack such an enemy position head-on apparently. Trench warfare, which will show great power in European wars in the future, has already begun to leak in this war. But it does not seem to have attracted the attention of the mainstream European military circles up to now. It has only been 10 days since the war started, and the situation is still unclear. Neither the Serbian nor the Bulgarian army has had time to attack and distract the Ottoman army if Constantine stormed Thessaloniki at this time. In order to protect the situation in Macedonia from collapsing, the Ottoman army stationed near Thessaloniki would swear to resist whether he wanted to or not. That also means that the Macedonian army will face the main force of the Osma army in Macedonia. On the other hand, in the face of such a solid enemy fortification, the Macedonian legion also needed more heavy artillery due to the inconvenience of moving the heavy artillery. It takes a certain amount of time to prepare. Moreover, after more than 10 days of contact with the Ottoman army, Constantine found that the Ottoman soldiers did not lack the courage to fight. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.